Yeah, brand new.
That doesn't happen to like a 67 Mustang.
So it was funny. It had to get towed out of here.
Jeez.
Another Mercedes?
No, it's an Acura.
Nice.
We're all trying to feel sorry for you buying a brand new Acura. We really are.
Yeah.
Stuart, how are you doing?
I'm great. Yeah, no issues. But I telling the gang earlier, I'm in my last hours of my 5 days of isolation. Can't wait.
Still don't want you coming near me.
We have the live stream going now, so you're ready to go anytime you want.
Excellent. Thank you. It is 6:30, so I'll start. So I'd like to call to order the Monday, January 24th, City of Colwood Council meeting. It's 6:30 p.m. And I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of Lekwungen speaking people. With COVID, we are unfortunately not able to gather in person yet. We're still meeting virtually, so I am going to look to council just to identify that you are here. So I'll just go through the list just the way I see it on screen. And if you could please unmute yourself and just let me know that you're here, that'd be great. Councillor Parkinson?
I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Day?
I am here.
Present. Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Logan?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen?
I'm here.
Thank you. And Councillor Baxter?
Here.
Excellent. Thank you. That moves us on to 2, approval of the agenda. I'm looking for the near-term and long-term agendas to be received, and that the agenda of the regular council meeting of January 24th be adopted as presented. Does Councillor, I'll look to Councillor Kobayashi. Oh, Councillor Kobayashi, you're muted. Councillor,
I was going to just move the motion.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. I'll look for a seconder. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Parkinson. Any objections? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any in opposition? And nobody opposes. I'm just going to clear everybody's hands. Lower all hands. Great. Thank you. That moves us on to Mayor's message. And actually, I have some things I wish to share this evening. All great news. All very exciting. So the first thing that I just wanted to share today with everybody, that today we were excited to be at Royal Beach for the announcement of Reliance Properties joining Seacliff Properties to bring the vision for Royal Beach to life. The $1.2 billion investment will bring exciting new opportunities for Colwood's new parks, new restaurants, a range of homes, and more than 700 jobs per year for the next 15 years. The first phase of construction is scheduled to start in the spring, with the construction of a new intersection at Matrosen Road and Latoria Road being the first thing to be worked on. And that was a great event earlier today. I'm very excited to see this project to begin to move forward. The second thing I wanted to talk about was that Colwood Fire and Rescue and public works crews were ready to protect the public safety in the early morning hours of Saturday, January 15th, when news of a volcanic eruption near the Tonga Islands resulted in a tsunami advisory for our area. In consultation with Emergency BC, it was determined that there was the possibility of unpredicted surges and strong currents. Therefore, access to shoreline areas was to be limited as a precautionary measure. No evacuations to any homes were recommended. City crews advised visitors at the Lagoon Beach and at Royal Beach to clear the area, and they closed the gates on Ocean Boulevard. And this is what's really important, and this is why I really wanted to talk about this today. Community members were grateful for the information, and everybody moved along voluntarily. And I have to say, I just thank the public so much. It's not fun being a city worker asking people to leave the beach at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And the fact that people were understanding and actually did it is a real credit to our community. So congratulations to all, and very much appreciated that everybody was so respectful. And then I have two staffing announcements that I'd like to share with the public, both very exciting for us. The first is I would like all of us to join in welcoming and congratulating Colwood's new fire chief, Brian Irwin. As a longtime member of our community, Chief Irwin has called on Colwood homes for over 30 years. Chief Irwin began his fire service career as a volunteer with Colwood Fire and Rescue in 2005, and then was hired as a career member in 2007. His career path and experience are diverse, having had the opportunity to work in all areas of the fire service, including operations, prevention, training, and as a member of the regional CRD hazmat team. He has also worked as an instructor and leader within the Justice Institute of BC, teaching a variety of subject matters ranging from the fundamentals of firefighting operations to advanced fire officer development. Colwood firefighters have faced challenging circumstances in this past couple of years, not only with the incredibly added pressures of a pandemic to an already challenging role, but also the recently untimely passing of our past chief, John Cassidy. We're very grateful to our acting chief, Greg Chow, who guided Colwood's fire rescue team through a very difficult time with compassion and confidence and a leadership that we will always appreciate. So thank you, Greg. With 75 years of valued service to Colwood as the West Shore's longest serving fire department, our community can look forward to continued excellence in emergency responses from our fire rescue teams with Chief Irwin at the helm. So I know Chief Irwin is online today, so unfortunately, we're just going to give you a virtual clap, but congratulations, welcome. And again, Acting Chief Chow, thank you so much. It was amazing the work you did for us over these past while, so thank you. On to my second staffing announcement. I'm also very pleased to be able to report to you today that John Rosenberg will be joining us at the City of Colwood as the Director of Engineering, effective Monday, April 4th. John comes to us most recently from the town of View Royal, where he has been the Director of Engineering and Parks since 2013. John has also previously worked as a municipal professional in Terrace, Invermere, and Salmon Arm. John is a progressive, strong, and confident leader who is passionate about helping to create great communities, and he's come to the best community that he could. So congratulations on coming to Colwood, John, and we look forward to that as well. Moving on, and that's it for today. So I'm just going to jump back to our agenda, which puts me at public participation. I will check with staff just to confirm that there is nobody registered to speak this evening.
We do not have anyone registered to speak.
And sorry, and I guess I should have also asked the question, there's nobody online right now. Nobody joined us just recently?
No. And
okay,
we just have the one written correspondence that was appended to the agenda.
Correct. Yeah. So that was in regards to 6.6. I'm not going to read the public participation statement because I don't need to, since I don't think we have any public participation, which will move us on to our next new business. This is 6.1. This is from Rachel Buskey. This is our Economic Recovery Program Coordinators, the Business Retention, Expansion, and Investment Attraction Program. Excuse me, I'm seeing a whole bunch of hands, so I must have done something wrong. So let's go to Councillor Parkinson first. Councillor Parkinson?
I think you skipped adoption of the January 10th minutes.
Thank you. Is that what everybody caught? No?
Yep. Okay,
then I will come back to Councillor Jansen. I'll come back to that. Thank you. I'll fix that in a second. Councillor Jansen, what else did I miss?
You didn't miss anything, but I'm just looking for the written submission regarding 6.1.
6.6.
Sorry, 6.6, and I don't see it. Has that been? I don't see it electronically either. I just wonder if that can be shared or read or posted or something.
Staff?
It was appended to the agenda on page 23 of the agenda. At point 1.
23. Okay, thank you.
And while you're looking for that, Councillor Day, I see your hand up as well. Councillor Day?
Sorry, yes, I just want to speak to the minutes.
Speak to the minutes. Okay, I'll come to that in a second. So actually, we'll come to that right now. So I will look for a motion for that the minutes of the regular council meeting held January 10th be adopted. We have a mover and seconder for that, and then I'll go to discussion. Councillor, sorry, I'm going to lower everybody's hands.
So I could make your motion, but I do need to make an amendment.
Well, sure. Why don't you make the amendment first, or say, and then
Sure.
we'll accept it all.
Okay, I'm just flipping to my other screen. 1 second here. So in the minutes, I'm just getting to my spot because I have it marked. It says that I was the mover for 8.3, and I was not the mover of that motion. I believe staff have reviewed it and they do have the mover, but I can't remember who they told me it was. And the other amendment I have is at the top of page 5, condition number 10. This was Councillor Parkinson's motion about the loading zones. And just the way it's worded, I think we should fix it because loading zones in front of buildings larger than the size of one parking spot would be, every building would be larger than one parking spot. So loading zones larger than one parking spot in front of buildings.
Okay. Staff, can you comment on the first?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to let you know, so for the mover and seconder, it was moved by Councillor Baxter and seconded by Councillor Jensen, and those changes have been made.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And to Councillor Day's second point, staff?
Yes, if you'd like to make an amendment and if council's in agreement, that would be fine.
Okay, well, what we'll do is we'll consider it as part of the main motion, and then we can debate it if people have an issue with what Councillor Day has suggested.
Thank you.
Do I have a seconder to Councillor Day's motion? I'll move it as, thank you. Councillor Parkinson seconds. Discussion, Councillor Jansen?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. But if Councillor Parkinson was a mover for that, I would love to hear that it's consistent with what he was thinking or what his vision was. That's
sure.
it.
No, that's a fair comment. Councillor Parkinson?
This is on the loading zones?
Correct.
Yeah, my thinking was that it seemed like the wording in there said that the loading zones had to match a table that was relating to ordinary parking spots. And I didn't believe that a loading zone for furniture delivery or some kind of cube truck that would be adequate. So I felt that needed a little more consideration.
So Councillor Day has brought up just the way it was worded originally, and then she made a suggestion for how to tighten it up. Councillor Parkinson, does that meet your intent?
Yes, I'm good with that.
Okay, great. Does that answer your question, Councillor Jansen? Yeah, excellent. All right, then I will, not seeing any other hands, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to new business. I'm just making sure nobody else puts their hand up. It looks like I'm right this time. Okay. This is Rachel Buskey. I'm not going to go through the whole thing again. I did see Rachel there. Excellent. Ms. Buskey, go ahead.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Council. As you are aware, the city has been working on a business retention, expansion and attraction programme. And this evening we have Jordan Tidy, Senior Consultant with MDB Insights, to present the findings of the Phase 3 Business Retention and Expansion Programme And so with that, I'd like to hand over to Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Good evening, everyone. I'll just start by sharing my screen. Perfect. And just make sure everyone can see all right. So as Rachel mentioned, this presentation is a review of the Business Retention Expansion Attraction Project for Phase 3. We'll just do a brief project overview, review Phase 1, the survey results, Phase 2, the target sector analysis, and then Phase 3, the investment attraction strategy we're working on right now. In the previous sections, we inventory in Phase 1, we inventoried the business community. We surveyed 100 businesses within the community, and we developed the Phase 1 report and presentation, which identified a number of businesses to conduct outreach with, who have identified whether or not they're in growth mode or perhaps facing issues that for the community to reach out to. We took that information as well as sector research into Phase 2 and created sector and subsector analysis, which allowed us to identify the specific sectors that we feel Colwood has the greatest chance to attract and the highest alignment to your existing strengths and workforce and businesses. And that takes us to Phase 3, so the actual investment attraction program, which identified the value proposition for the community, identified some target sector marketing materials, and the report and presentation, which I'll get into now. So when talking about Colwood and the BREA, so one of the things we wanted to sort of kick off with is that, there are a number of trends, accelerated by COVID-19 that have really influenced Colwood's target sector focus from our perspective, primarily identifying opportunities that align with the community's ability to attract a skilled, educated, high-earning workforce. So essentially at this stage, you're already attracting these folks. Overall, your local workforce is in that exact same area: skilled, educated, high earning, and this is the same workforce that is benefiting the most from trends accelerated by COVID-19 related to being able to work remotely, choose the quality of life they're looking for, be able to perhaps look at other options in terms of where they choose to spend their time and live. We take a look at Colwood's economy. It's highly integrated into the capital region, and you have significant concentrations of labor and businesses in the knowledge economy and also in the construction sector. The target sectors identified by the project team sort of align with those concentrations of labor and businesses within Colwood, the broader capital region, and the Lower Mainland. They also reflect that Colwood at this moment does face some development constraints in terms of a lack of developable land and available office space, which doesn't allow for all types of uses that may consider Colwood as a location. So in terms of the strategy itself, it's based around two pillars that sort of underpin the city's business retention, expansion, and attraction efforts. And in each pillar contains proposed actions and associated tactics. And then just as a brief recap, the sectors identified in the previous phase were construction, information communications and technology, professional scientific and technology, professional scientific and technical services, apologies, and finance and insurance. And essentially what we want to do is just show how, Colwood is uniquely situated to work with these particular sectors in terms of having, concentration of businesses workforce, the fact that these are sectors that are expanding, that we're seeing higher earning wages, we're seeing higher growth within the region, that they align with the engagement results from conversations we've had with the business community and the survey responses, and they just align with your overall regional strengths. So in terms of the first pillar related to business retention expansion, so our first action is all around supporting locally owned businesses. Now, in many cases, this might seem fairly obvious, but what we're trying to do is just say, a focus on basics is one of the most important things to make sure you're doing. So conducting those regular one-on-one business meetings with local businesses to understand their gaps and challenges, and working collaboratively with those businesses to address barriers that are limiting their expansion. And through the survey work we did in earlier phases of the project, and we were able to identify some of those barriers and challenges, so that as the business retention expansion team gets out there and has those conversations, they're really able to bring value to those conversations right off the bat because they have an understanding of what issues those businesses are facing. We've also suggested, developing and maintaining the inventory of program services and funding that businesses may need to support expansion in the city, including available workforce development programs, R&D funding, educational institutions that are prepared to partner with local firms and investors. Action number 2 was all related to the BRE response. So this is all about following up directly with those green and red flag companies I mentioned earlier to support their expansion or to work on the retention side of things, and making sure that the businesses that are reached out to in terms of priority are those that are planning to make one of those changes within the next 6 months. We also identified developing a business visitation program and data collection tool utilizing a client relationship management software to gather information to support overall investment attraction, and then track and report on key performance metrics, including the number of businesses supported by the sector, the number of businesses that expanded, the number of new investments and new jobs made in the community. These metrics, tracked and properly promoted, can encourage businesses to continue to engage with Colwood and enhance the city's profile. In terms of action number 3, economic diversification, we've identified that maintaining a searchable directory of businesses by NAICS niche target sector and subsectors is an important step. Now, as part of the work we did in the earlier phases of the project, we were actually able to access a number of different databases to supplement the existing database that the city currently had for its business community. So it's now enhanced and also has been cleaned through that process of reaching out to businesses and making sure that, phone numbers are correct, the right businesses are in the right locations, just making sure that that directory is as clean and up to date as possible. So those steps have been taken to sort of support that. And our suggestion is really to maintain that database. We've also identified, in terms of following up businesses visits, determining if businesses are looking for export opportunities. This could facilitate local business growth and expansion based on increased sales and local employment. And then if the demand is there in the business community, looking at potentially implementing a series of export-oriented events for local entrepreneurs and companies to highlight the advantages of exporting. We've also identified using the business visitation surveys and BRE program to obtain feedback and information relevant to their products and services, the number of employees, market reach, just making sure we're getting as much information as possible from these meetings by being highly targeted, because we see the BRE type meetings, they're not just about enhancing your community, which is a huge and important aspect, but making sure that we're mining these companies for leads and looking at opportunities to support them through investment attraction. And then identifying and improving areas of municipal support. So conducting a review of the small business supports and entrepreneurial services to determine their overall uptake, and using the collected data to identify actions and programming to fill any identified gaps. And then in collaboration with local businesses, identifying the same challenges where businesses need more support. So this could result in new buy local initiatives, street festivals, or other events, bringing residents and businesses together within the community. Moving on to pillar number 2, which is more focused on overall investment attraction. So this is with working with local real estate community and relevant property owners to inventory and make accessible data on targeted properties and buildings through the web, sector materials, or site selection tool. And really what we're trying to do in this area is just make sure that we know all of those available sites and we have a really good understanding of what's currently out there, the issues that are impacting their ability to be developed, and what the current plan is with the owners. Just make sure we have all that information and then we're able to promote those sites that we really feel are the highest priority. And then maintaining a data set of community and target sector data points and profiles outlining Colwood's unique value proposition, while continually vetting these data points with businesses and investors to ensure they resonate with the industries. So essentially just making sure that as we develop profiles and materials, we're asking the business community, does this make sense? Are these the things you're looking for? Is there something we're missing in terms of what you're looking for in terms of an expansion or an investment area? And then also improving investment readiness. So identifying an investment response team to engage potential investors through lead generation or business engagement. And then when required, these business champions to share their success stories and support the overall process. Supporting the redevelopment and densification of existing employment lands through land use planning, and supporting the redevelopment of commercial corridors and built form offices and commercial space to support target sector attraction. And a lot of this just comes down to the specific sectors that we're talking about in terms of attracting and making sure that we have the assets that they're looking for in terms of their location for investment. And then also exploring desired product development. So looking at different types of mixed use development and density through development incentives to make sure that we're building the correct sites that make sense for these businesses. The next section is lead generation. So continuing strengthening the existing network of local, regional, provincial stakeholder relationships to ensure leads flow to Colwood, creating a list of target list of specific businesses within target sectors and developing relationships for expansion opportunities and leveraging local business networks and supply chains to determine opportunities for warm introductions for firms considering expanding in the region. And one of the things we sort of see as part of that, continuing to strengthen that network, is just making sure that our value proposition is very clearly understood, that we understand exactly which businesses we're really interested in attracting, and making sure that that's well known, and just making sure that those partners who do receive leads from external sources, be it the trade commissioner services or the investment attraction services at the provincial level, making sure that they understand, the types of investment opportunities the community is really looking for, so Colwood can stay top of mind when those come up. And then in terms of tying into that, the marketing materials, developing those target sector profiles, including business profiles to support investment attraction, partnering with developers in the real estate community to better understand their targets and provide supportive investment data, brochures, and pitch decks. Then also maintaining a comprehensive community profile and target sector profiles to support marketing and promotion activities. So those are all of the actions that are there. We've developed a series of data points through this report to support the development of these marketing materials, and in terms of the development of overall profiles to make things as easy as possible for the community to get started on these areas. And those are the two pillars of the strategy, and that is the investment attraction program. Obviously, more detail in the attached report, but this as far as the presentation goes, we're at the end. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I will go to council for questions. Unfortunately, I can't see council just yet. I need just the screen to drop off. Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So I guess I'm a little bit disappointed in the report, only because I don't see how we might move beyond this. So I wonder, Jordan, if you could explain your vision, because if we're looking at increasing the uptake of, say, development businesses, we have a finite amount of land, and as development occurs, we have increasing congestion. So how do we see that evolving into a sustainable vision for Colwood?
Well, part of that is the sectors that were identified. A lot of them are knowledge sector areas that don't really require a lot of additional space. Really, a lot of the times you're looking for more flexible office space in built form, the types of things that can be accommodated through redevelopment or development of some of the different sites that are out there. They're also fairly supportive of remote working as well, so they don't necessarily require as much infrastructure or the actual development of large sites to get up and running. But you're absolutely right. There's only so much space to be developed, and as great news as the new development was mentioned earlier is, a lot of that is focused on residential, which is fantastic for the community. But if there's not necessarily the space for different types of so let's say commercial development, it's one of those areas that there's the community has the opportunity to sort of influence through the planning process and through the development processes to sort of incentivize the development of those types of uses that will support expansion within those sectors that are connected to the capital region economy and the lower mainland economy.
Okay, and when it came to your presentation, you also promote buy local initiatives. But how do you buy local when it comes to development?
Well, then, as you say, it's within different sectors, it's more difficult to do. Absolutely. One of the great things about Colwood, though, and as we mentioned in the report, there are actually a fairly significant concentration of construction businesses and workforce locally within the community already. So it definitely seems like there might be an opportunity to leverage those assets that are within community. There's a number of different ways to approach that through different incentives related to that, but it is a difficult one, particularly if we're talking about things like structural steel, which won't necessarily be able to be manufactured locally.
Okay, and I had hoped to see more resident use type businesses being promoted. I've heard quite a bit from our residents that, you know, they want to have businesses located in Colwood to be able to shop at. And I really didn't make that connection in your presentation. So is there hope for more local market investment in Colwood?
So the way we tend to look at those types of sectors, you know, for example, shopping, retail, service sectors, we sort of see those sectors follow population bases. What we tend to focus on in terms of our approach is looking at those types of businesses that will, you know, provide a multiplier effect within the community. So we're looking at multiple higher paying jobs, different options in terms of definitely when it comes to, for example, office space, higher property tax and property valuation as well, to sort of bring that in. So when we talk about focusing on those sectors, we're looking at those sort of highest value, with the idea being that, you know, the retail, the commercial will follow those residents and those businesses, that will follow that population as it grows. And we don't necessarily need to be as focused on those areas as the community and economy develops.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will go to Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a few comments and questions here, Jordan. Thank you very much. I mean, it was a very detailed report that you've done here. Seen similar things like this working in other cities right now in the economic development side. A lot of these are EDI type initiatives, and you know, this is something that you know, we in the beginning sort of asked ourselves that question, you know, whether we needed an EDO going forward, because I still look at this and I says, there's a lot of work here. Like, who's doing this? So, you know, that's, you know, one of my questions is like, what is the cost of going forward here? Because, you know, to me, this looks like we're going to be hiring an EDO if we were to accomplish what we've got here. And a lot of the action items that you do have pertain to larger companies. Like we've basically got a cottage industry out here in Colwood, small businesses. There are a lot of small businesses. So a lot of the action items are not appropriate for the small businesses. At being a small business owner myself previously, had 3 of them here in the Greater Victoria area. I can tell you there's, you know, you're stepping on my toes as a private entrepreneur. I wouldn't want, you know, the city involved in some of these things. And there are swimming lanes for some of the other initiatives you had, especially when you get into export, you know, Development Canada, getting involved with them, or, you know, going to the Business Bank of Canada for forward loans. And, you know, we basically all know that as business people. So I guess this is where I'm having difficulties right now. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this because, you know, I think we made a conscious decision earlier that we weren't going to do an EDO, and the whole purpose when we did this business recovery and it got expanded as we went along, obviously, that we weren't going to be in the getting an economic development officer. I mean, that was our decision collectively, I believe. So I guess that's the big question we have. You know, you've got all these action items, but and it goes back to what Councillor Day had said before. Like, what's the path going forward? Like, what's the cost of doing this now? I mean, we got to see that impact, because if we all go, yep, we acknowledge this tonight, then later on it's going to come back and, oh, we wanted it. So that's my biggest fear right now. Because we were actually looking at some of the sunset industries really in Colwood, for example. I mean, for the next 15 years, we know we have 700 construction jobs, but as you said before in your own in your data, land's limited now, and you know, all the jobs will be outside the municipality. So, you know, I was hoping to see that, you know, maybe an idea of how we diversify our business community. But anyways, that's just my comment. If you want to come back on that, Jordan.
For sure. I mean, in terms of, you know, actioning a number of these items, I would say in terms of the overall cost, I mean, so many of these items are identified to leverage existing services and to your point, there are many existing services out there to support businesses in terms of access to things like export development, different types of support services that are out there. And in many communities, economic development is really just about having conversations with business owners at the right time and making sure you're giving them the support they need that they might not be aware of. And just by being there to coordinate, provide information, and connect people to the right places, there can be a huge impact that doesn't necessarily have to cost a lot of money, but if it's done in the right way. So a lot of these actions have been designed to really maximize the current staff that you've got, at the city. Make sure that they've got the tools that they need to be successful without it costing a whole bunch of additional dollars in terms of activating. And really, when we look at particularly the sort of phase one in terms of the business survey, reaching out to the business community. I mean, there's a wealth of data from that work that really tells us exactly, who's out there, the specific issues they're running into, and there's a number of businesses out there who are planning to expand, within the next 6 months identified. And so even just reaching out, having those conversations, understanding what they need to expand and connecting them to those resources, none of that has to necessarily be all that expensive, but it can be really beneficial in terms of, to your point, diversifying the local economy.
I also saw that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Kobe.
Oh, that's fine. Thanks, Mayor Martin.
I just saw that Ms. Buskey and Mr. Borholt had turned on their camera, so I don't know if either one of them also wish to comment.
I'd like to comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to explain that in my covering report, I explained that we would like to prioritise the business outreach piece, and I would be doing that business outreach for the red flagged and green flagged businesses. And then the other part to the report explained that we would like to incorporate the actions and tactics from MDB's work into 2022 economic development strategy. So that would progress the 2014 economic development strategy a bunch of years forward to incorporate that work into a 2022 piece of work. And this is being funded through the recovery grant, the COVID recovery grant, and remaining funds that are in that COVID recovery grant will be used to fund additional items of actions and tactics after the business outreach piece has been done. And the business outreach piece will help us prioritize which of those additional actions we want to take on board. Thank you.
Thank you. I will go to Councillor Baxter next. Oh, Councillor Baxter, can you unmute, please?
Thank you. I just have a question about encouraging the construction of office space. Do we currently have any motivation, any encouragement in our zoning bylaws, for instance, to encourage people to build office space, or do we have plans to bring any forward? This is really a staff question, I think.
Mr. Mayor, maybe I'll take a shot at that question from Councillor Baxter.
Please.
Insofar as we have zoning in place that provides the opportunity for office space, that does exist. I can't say that there's a policy to incentivize it beyond the fact that we do not charge amenity contributions for office space and commercial. But I would like to add to Ms. Buskey's comments. When we come back with options for an update to the economic development strategy, we would like to give council an opportunity to look at the different tactics and prioritize what council feels are the most effective strategies, and then also tie that to the resourcing that we would estimate that would be associated with each tactic. So these types of other initiatives could be something that we consider later with the economic development strategy update.
And would that possibly involve pre-zoning certain areas?
Yes, there's a current council direction to proceed with an upzoning initiative around the Colwood Corners area. So staff are working on that now. We expect that employment generating uses will be part of that consideration for council to look at, as well as we have direction to look at the transit growth corridors for aligning zoning with the official community plan designation. However, in that case, we're primarily looking at implementation of the official community plan, which calls for residential construction and small scale commercial.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And a lot of what my thoughts are have been sort of said already. So I'll just throw out a few comments. Firstly, probably useful to have done the deep dive with all the existing businesses in town just to sort of get a global sense of where they're at. So it's good to have that information. I guess I worry a little bit about cost benefit, and maybe as they come back with their list of tactics, we'll get a better feel for that. If you know, some of the steps seem expensive, some of them seem like we're like Councillor Kobayashi says, we're stepping on other people's toes. I don't think the realtors need us to help them tell what's available land out here and what isn't. So that's pretty much it. I'm just worried. My sense is that yes, we have zoned a fair bit of stuff for office in Royal Beach and Royal Bay. And it's just people have to get up and get going. These projects take a while to get off the ground and actually happen. I suspect they will. We've certainly looked at upzoning on the commercial strip there with the Galaxy Motors site in particular. And I think I don't think that the reputation of Colwood within the district is don't take projects there because they'll never approve them. I think we've been seen to move things along pretty expeditiously. So. Yeah, I guess I'm just cautious about how much we do and why and what it costs. I think we're more in a case of accepting what comes at us as land supply throughout the region gets squeezed. We have some here that will be attractive to people, so we maybe just have to catch our breath and let them come. So just some comments, interesting stuff. Look forward to the next step. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Parkinson. I don't see any other hands. So we do have a staff recommendation. So I'll look to see if anyone on council is interested in moving that, or if there's a different motion in place. Councillor Parkinson. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
I'll move that.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, are you willing to second that?
Yes.
You are. Great, thank you. Is there any other discussion? Just for the public, I will read the motion just so that everybody has it. The recommendation is that the business retention, expansion, and attraction outcomes be adopted and incorporated into the economic development strategy for 2022. So I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your virtual hands for me. I see, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to lower hands again. My apologies. Councillor Baxter seconded it, but his hand was up for opposing, so I don't think he meant to do that. So let's try it one more time. I lowered everybody's hands. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Okay. Oh, thank you. Councillor Day opposes. The motion passes. That takes us to 6.2. This is Mr. Borhill, our Director of Community Services, in regards to BC Transit, corridor improvements, and West Shore update. Mr. Borhill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is my pleasure to introduce our next two presenters from BC Transit, Levi Meganbeer, Senior Transit Planner Lead, and Lisa Mullins, Senior Manager of Government Relations. They'll be presenting on the West Shore Local Area Transit Plan, as well as an update on the implementation of the Rapid Bus Line, and new potential transit routes in Colwood, before concluding with an update on public transit infrastructure projects in Colwood and throughout the Greater Victoria region. With that, I ask that Mr. Meganbeer and Ms. Mullins be permitted to start the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, thanks for that introduction, Ian, and thank you, Your Worship, and members of council for having myself and Lisa here today. Excited to be here. So as Ian mentioned, really looking to update council on the West Shore Local Area Transit Plan project and get some some thoughts and feedback from council, and then as well just a brief update on some current transit infrastructure related projects within the City of Colwood jurisdiction. So the 2022 West Shore Local Area Transit Plan was definitely a much needed project. We conducted the first one in 2015, and there's just been a huge amount of development within the West Shore region over the last 5 to 7 years. So the original plan was no longer really reflective of the development context within the West Shore. So
Levi, I'm just going to interrupt just for a moment. Are you intending to? Are you meaning to be showing us something right now? Because we're not seeing anything.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I thought I shared my screen, but
now it's now we can see it.
There we go. Thank you, Worship. Just backpedaling. So based off that context, one of the key goals for the West Shore Local Area Transit Plan was really just to better align the transit network in the West Shore to the recent development we've been seeing within the region, and really better aligning with the density patterns that we've been seeing emerge, because where our ridership is being generated and where our service is being provided in terms of high level of frequency is not necessarily aligned throughout the community. So beyond that, some other key objectives as part of the plan was really to look at implementing rapid bus within the region, both in the short term and sort of into the medium term as well, and looking at what that could look like along those 2 time horizons. And then finally, as well, looking at routing and service changes that help support the implementation of rapid bus and once again, better align that network. And so one of the key themes as part of this plan is we're going to see a frequent transit network emerging, hopefully within the short term, within the West Shore area, which really speaks to the fact that the community has developed significantly and is ready to support that level of service beyond the existing Route 50 corridor. In terms of project process, so the project kicked off in summer of last year. So we were supported by Watt Consulting on this particular project. The project was led by a working group, which is comprised of local staff from each of the West Shore communities. And so it was great having Colwood staff participating in this process. We conducted public engagement between late October to late November of last year. And I'll speak to that sort of key findings there in a moment. And then as well, we've moved into the local government feedback phase. So we just presented to Langford in December, presented to council or to Colwood Council this evening, and then as well we'll be presenting to the Chosen next week, I believe. And then finally, once we've made any final tweaks and adjustments based off council feedback, we'll be presenting this to the Victoria Regional Transit Commission later in February this year. As I mentioned, we had a pretty significant public engagement, online public engagement process supporting this project. We had it promoted through newspaper and digital ads, social media ads, temporary bus stop signs, distributed it throughout media advisory, all kinds of other methods. So we got a pretty good response rate, almost 600 respondents. And some of the key findings from the process, we got a great response rate from West Shore residents, which was great to see. About 70% of all respondents were from within the West Shore region. The majority of respondents tended to use transit for work, shopping, and errands. Another key finding we found is that although people did reduce their reliance on transit since the start of the pandemic, we still do have a core group of regular transit riders within the West Shore. So it was great to see, with over 25% of all respondents still taking transit 5+ days per week. In terms of the key themes we heard, the first thing, the graph on the right there, you'll see we had over 90% of respondents supportive of our proposed short-term rapid bus implementation, which is great to see. Great when you see over 90% support for anything in a public engagement process. Some other key themes we heard included the importance of the connections between West Shore and Uvic. We know that there's a large group of students that attend Uvic and Camosun that both find residents within the West Shore region. So we have some considerations in the plan to accommodate that. Really looking to serve rapidly developing areas like Royal Bay, Happy Valley and Latoria Road areas. And then as well, we just had some pretty significant support for a lot of proposed network changes in the West Shore. Once again, we're really looking to better align service levels to places we've been seeing development. So it's not overly surprising that the proposals were supported by residents who would like to take transit in those areas. So in terms of the short-term proposed West Shore Rapid Bus line, not hugely significant changes from service delivery perspective over the existing Route 50. Some of the key changes we're planning for the initial implementation, which at this point we plan to implement in fall of this year. Looking at doing some stop spacing changes within the West Shore area between Langford and Colwood, once again to speed transit service and improve reliability. And then as well, looking to implement some new branding, some new marketing associated with it, and some improvements to service levels as well. And then once again, as we move into the future, we included a medium-term rapid bus proposal as part of the engagement process as well, looking to expand rapid bus to support continuing to develop areas within the West Shore area. So we looked at extending rapid bus to the Belmont Market area as well as West Hills. What we found is that the Belmont Market was supported more strongly by the public, and it was also based off density projections was a higher total. There was just more people projected to be in that area in terms of density per kilometer of route traveled. So at this point, that's the option that BC Transit is recommending that the Commission move forward with. And as part of the medium term, we've looked to implement some improved rapid bus stations. So really improving some infrastructure and continuing to build service levels on that service. As I mentioned, one of the key themes of this project was to implement a new frequent transit network spine within the West Shore region. So the proposal involves making some changes to your existing Route 52, which is your highest local route within the West Shore area beyond the Route 50. And so these changes look at connecting the Millstream Village area to downtown Langford, through Happy Valley, Latoria to Royal Bay, and then from Royal Bay through Machosen Road, Soup Road to the Colwood Exchange. So once again, this initially will look to establish a foundation of a new FTN in the short term. So likely not quite the 15-minute service for day one that we would associate with the frequent transit network, but then in the medium term building up to that service level. And I think this is really important because the density has reached a level in the West Shore that supports this level of service. And then as well, between rapid bus and this frequent transit network, we've been able to revision the network within the West Shore to better align to supporting the changes in density and travel patterns within the region. So you can see that here. This is the proposed network restructure for the short term within the West Shore. You can see once again, a lot of these are local routes that are building around the rapid bus line, Route 50, the orange one, and then the dark blue line, the proposed frequent transit network. And some of the key themes associated with this is really improving service to the rapidly developing Royal Bay area, and improving the legibility of routing within the Royal Bay area as well. Currently, the routing is really circuitous and hard to understand, so this provides bidirectional services on the key corridors connecting to and from the Royal Bay community. Some other key options associated with this include proposal to serve Fort Rod Hill, the backside of Bear Mountain, so Skirt Mountain, and then as well just some other minor tweaks and changes. In terms of some additional service concepts we engaged on for the medium term, includes some minor changes to that proposed FTN. So in phase one, we proposed the route to continue all the way up to the top of Bear Mountain. But then once we increase service up to 15-minute service, we'd look to probably truncate that at the base of Bear Mountain, just given the differences in density, and then provide separate service up to Bear Mountain. A couple other options, including extending the Route 46 further into West Hills, And then, as I mentioned, extending rapid bus to the Belmont Market area, and then some minor tweaks to a couple of other routes. One thing I did want to flag, we are looking at the opportunity to extend the Route 51 to West Hills. It's a limited service directly connected between the West Shore and Uvic. And so this would be one of the options for improving connections to Uvic from the West Shore that we heard clearly through the engagement process. In terms of supporting infrastructure to build upon the service for this plan, of course, the Royal Bay Exchange is being developed. I believe it's, if not now, it's very, very soon to be developed. So I understand that's probably developer-led, but that's been identified. There's additional infrastructure work that's needed to support the Belmont Market Terminus for the medium-term rapid bus. So we'll be working with our local government partners around opportunities there. And as I'll speak to shortly, we've got some projects that are currently underway around transit priority along Soup Road to Highway 1. And so we've just flagged a number of those key projects as part of the plan, as well as looking at some additional park and ride opportunities and other passenger infrastructure improvements, including shelters, benches, and infrastructure to support active transportation more holistically within the community. So with that, I'll just give a really quick update as well, as I mentioned, on current West Shore transit infrastructure projects. So these are projects that are already sort of in progress. So the first one, of course, is the Island Highway Transit Priority Project, looking at transit priority along Soup Road. So that includes a queue jumper at Whale Road, as well as dedicated transit right-of-way between 6 Mile and Highway 1. So the detailed design for that project is complete now. Implementation funding applications are underway. And really, we're just pending that final approval to kickstart construction, which we hope to initiate later this year. We have a rapid bus stations West Shore Line project that's being kicked off currently. And so we've got agreements with City of Langford, City of Colwood, and the City of Victoria. And they're all in various stages of development. And so really this is looking to find opportunities to improve that rapid bus infrastructure to align with that medium-term rapid bus proposal that we included in the plan. And then, of course, work is underway with the ministry as we look to continue to improve transit priority along Highway 1, connecting between the Victoria Core and the West Shore. And then the other thing I'll flag too is the West Shore Transit Priority Study, which is looking not just at the Island Highway corridor, but more broadly within the West Shore region. We're in phase 2 detailed design planning a little later this year, and we're looking to advance some of those transit priority concepts that were approved in principle for both Soup Road and Goldstream Avenue. So stay tuned for updates on that as we continue to move forward. And with that, I'll turn the floor over and happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Excellent, thank you. Great report. I will look to council. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much. Just a very simple question here, Levi. I'm just trying to understand what you mean by short-term and medium-term. It's like short-term within the year, medium terms within the next 2 years. Like, can you just define what you mean by that? Thank you.
Certainly. Fantastic question. So through the chair, short-term we usually consider as 1 to 3 years in that range, and medium-term is anywhere between the 3 to 5 years when we look at a local area transit plan. So yeah, thank you for asking that clarifying question. I'm sure that will help the rest of the council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter. And Levi, could I have you not share your screen now? Just because I can't see my council. Thank you. Councillor Baxter. Yeah.
Right. I'm really looking forward to rapid bus. But in addition to better bus service, I just want to tell a very short story. I organized 6 or 7 colleagues some years ago to all take the bus downtown because they all needed to be at the same event downtown. And every single one of them turned up at the bus stop without the correct change and without bus tickets. And this lack of familiarity with bus travel is a difficulty in starting out. So I wonder if BC Transit locally is thinking about something like the Compass card, which could solve that problem.
It's a fantastic question, Councillor Baxter. I will turn this question over to my colleague, Lisa Mullins. There you go.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter, for that question. Yes, certainly BC Transit has been looking towards better fair methods of payment for folks. Having the right amount of change is challenging for folks. We have been looking into not a Compass card, but more of the next iteration of payments, so more of a tap and pay. And we'll certainly have more information on that within the next year. We're into development on that particular project and expect to have information out on a proponent and what next steps will look like. But certainly it'll make it more viable for people and more integrated with other modes of transportation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm just a couple of things. I'm curious, what does it mean when you talk about a transit terminus? I'm familiar with bus stops and transit circles, but I'm not at all familiar with terminus.
Yeah, so through the chair, terminus is a bit of a blanket statement for any kind of infrastructure that would support end of route facilities. So that could be anything between just a bus stop pullout, where a bus can pull over and take a bit of recovery time before starting its next trip, or it could be considered part of an exchange, where buses maybe take where a couple of routes maybe terminate, and there's some passenger transfer activity between them. But it just depends on the context. So it's a bit of a blanket statement that really just identifies where routes are ending and where buses may need a bit of some kind of infrastructure to support them just getting out of the roadway and taking some recovery before they over time.
Okay, and why was Belmont Market selected for the terminus?
So excellent question. So through the chair, as I mentioned, there was kind of two key points. One was that we did a corridor density assessment, where we looked at existing and future anticipated development density within 400 meters of the two proposed corridor extensions to rapid bus. And I can't remember the exact percentage, but the Belmont Market one was something in the range, I think, of like 25 to 30% higher in terms of projected average density along the corridor. And then as well, I think it was something like 70%, 65 to 70% of respondents preferred the Belmont Market terminus to the West Hills terminus. So we essentially put that out there and asked respondents to identify what their preference was, and the Belmont Market one seemed to be the more popular one from the public as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And then on, I think it was your second or third slide, there's a map and you talk about the frequent transit corridor, the regular corridors, and then there was a medium term. And on that map, you have a road that is labeled as Fulton Road, which I believe is actually VMP. And you also have on your legend the medium term or the medium, the mid frequency transit service is in blue. Whereas the frequent is in orange and the regular is in, I think, gray. But there are no medium routes. There's either frequent transit or regular transit. So I'm just wondering why that is, and is it going to change?
Yeah, excellent question. So through the chair, the map on slide 3 was our existing transit network map. So one of the key plans for the project was to implement a new frequent transit network within the West Shore region. because what we've seen is with the rapid pace of development, the community is definitely ready for a frequent transit corridor within the community. And so that was one of the key pieces that we engaged with the public on, was the establishment of that revised Route 52, which would become that blue route that you're identifying within the community, connecting between the Millstream Village area through the core of Langford, down Happy Valley, Latoria to Royal Bay, and then up the Chosen Road to and Souk Road to Colwood, the Colwood Exchange at Colwood and Whale Road. So that really would become that new blue line you identified, providing 15-minute service in the medium term from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Friday, 7 days a week.
And can you correct your map? That's not Fulton Road, I don't believe.
Certainly. Thank you for pointing that out. We'll pass that along to our marketing team.
Okay. And this question is probably for Lisa. I have been sitting on the Inter-Municipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues for some time, and they liaise with the Accessible Transportation Advisory Committee. And we have been having a lot of difficulty getting connected back in with that committee. We've asked numerous times to be included on the minutes to our chair. And I'm just wondering, is the Accessible Transportation Advisory Committee still meeting?
Through the chair, yes, the ATAC committee does meet on a regular basis, and I could facilitate access to their minutes for you and reconnect you. There has been a change in staff with that committee, but no, they're still meeting on a regular basis virtually right now.
Okay, that would be really good, and good to try to connect that committee, because they have given me a lot of great insight into the needs of access throughout our region. So thank you.
Happy to follow up.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the presentation. My original question was just like Councillor Kobayashi's. What's short term? What's medium term? And I guess from that we can project that anything beyond medium term is probably in the 6, 7 to 10 year range, something like that. So, my fellow councillors, I think we need to think a little bit about. We have cases. We have what we call transit growth corridors and things like that, and we sort of need to marry those, I guess, a little bit with projected transit routing. And I hate to steal what's probably a copycatted analogy, but it's kind of like the duck, I guess. So you have a little bit of development, you get a little bit of better transit, a little bit more development, a little bit better transit. I think we end up not doing it well. So I think more nothing to do with the transit people, but with our own planning, we need to think a little bit about. Are we getting ahead of ourselves by designating transit growth corridors that are unlikely to see transit growth for several years? So, as I said, not for you guys at transit, but relevant. I thought I would throw it out there. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. So I will say thank you very much for the presentation today. Very much appreciated it. And we will move on to 6.3. which is Jen Hempting, our Director of Finance, regarding the draft 2022 West Shore Park and Recreational Society budget. Ms.
Thank
Hempting.
you. Thank you, Mayor Martin. We are seeking Council's approval tonight of the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society's 2022 budget requisition. So just give us one moment. I will turn it over to the West Shore Parks administrative staff. We have Grant Brown, Chief Administrative Officer, and he will provide council with a brief presentation, and then we will be happy to answer any questions. So Grant, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Jen. Just trying to get all my technology working here. Just a second. Cool.
Oh, you had it, Grant. You had it. It was up, and then you took it. You took it back down.
Cool.
I'll let you know when it comes back up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's loading now.
Do you see that? You see that now? It's the got the with the kids on the beach.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
See
perfect. Yeah, sorry, my screen showed something else and I had me a little concerned.
That. Well, we won't ask what it was.
No, it's actually the agenda from the meeting. So thank you, Your Worship and Council, for inviting us to present our West Shore Society 2022 budget and requisition requests. Our presentation today will take you through a high-level summary of the 2021 financial projections, the 5-year financial plan for 2022 through 2026, the 2022 capital projects, major expense increases for 2022, as well as the requisition impact of all these and what their effect is on each municipality. For 2021, we have a projected revenues to surpass budgeted levels by 10% or 110% of budget, and expenditures to be 2% less than budgeted or 98% of budget. A number of factors have led to these, most notably the continued tremendous demand for both childcare programs. Thank you, and definitely in part to working with Colwood to get the childcare center expansion that was completed this fall, as well as a number of filming opportunities that we hosted for Netflix for the production of Maid. That was definitely unexpected in the beginning of the year and definitely well received at that time of the year when we were still certainly in a lot of restrictions as far as COVID went. And we were able to rent out a number of our facilities to the pub or for movie presentations. The key improvements over the budget, as well as the one shortfall listed for 2021, are in the chart on the left. As mentioned, we saw unexpected $130,000 in revenue related to the Netflix filming. Facility rentals, once they were allowed in the different varieties, both indoor and outdoor, in particular, outdoor remained really high. There wasn't a lot of restrictions related to the use of running of programs and for sporting events and so on, or not events necessarily, but for practicing and eventually games within the region. There were just a lot of restrictions on the spectatorship side. So we saw incredible demand on our fields. That certainly didn't die down as people were excited to get back into some of the seasons that were cut short back in 2020. Net pool operations in both between programs and maintenance did better than expected. A lot of that, again, was the demand, as I'll mention a few times through this slide. In 2020, the pool remained closed for a lot of that time due to COVID and just funding challenges we were having with decreased usership overall. And so the facility remained closed. It was definitely seen that was a hardship for the West Shore. As it came back on, demand was very high. If we were allowed to have them in there, it was definitely full. There was restrictions from the province on what we could do, and that was our only limiting factor. High demands on lessons, that's continued. In particular, right now, we're still running into that. We're unfortunately, due to the restrictions, I'm not sure if they're reopened now, but the Y was closed, and the Y hasn't offered swimming lessons throughout the reopening after COVID, and so we are the only swimming lesson availability on the West Shore. And so there's definitely been a much higher demand than there has been what we can actually offer. Due to that, there's only so much room in the pool. An example was when we first opened back up, the first set of swimming lessons sold out in 6 minutes. And so that's hundreds of kids, and it was sold out in 6 minutes. Licensed care programs continue to be high demand and doing very well. Arts and culture programming had a very good year. In particular, the Pottery Studio, that move out of the Q Center over to Centennial Center to really make a focus of that building for a lot of our arts and culture programs. We have dance programs out of there, as well as art. With the Pottery Studio now moved over to there has been a big increase in usage. And the golf course continues to surpass any of our recent memories. Through COVID, it's been a very high demand. It was one of the sporting aspects that was allowed throughout COVID. And that has continued to be really high. Even with the weather that certainly turned poor once we got into November and most of December, we still saw the 7th highest usage of the golf course on record. And that's after following a number of years where we had significant drops, where we peaked in the early 2000s, mid 2000s for golf usage. And that's been pretty common with a lot of the golf courses. But that has certainly shown an increase. The one area that didn't bounce back as we had hoped, but that did early on in the year did not, is the weight room admissions. There were a lot of restrictions, as was recently as well. There seemed to be the restrictions hit the weight rooms the worst. And we didn't see, due to those, we couldn't host as many people. And as we were allowed to start opening them up into the spring and into the summer last year, there was just a hesitancy. I think there was so much restriction related to weight rooms, and they were closed for a while, that as I'm sure anyone who tried to buy any home gym equipment, it became very challenging to find. People developed their own workout centers in their garages and in their basements and so on. And I think we saw some of that. By the time we hit the fall, we actually started to see pre-COVID numbers in our weight room, and numbers were bouncing back for the fall. And then unfortunately, as we hit to later December and Omicron was taking hold of everywhere, that we saw another closure, which is now just recently reopened to the public. So as you can see, we're projecting operationally just over a $550,000 surplus for 2021. In addition to this, as you may recall, to those areas that are doing better, if you may recall, the 2021 budget submission was purposefully conservative, as the expectations for 2021 were certainly unknown and uncertain on how COVID restrictions would fall for the year. We were hopeful, but we're unsure how that would work out, as well as if there are any hesitations from the public. So those kind of combinations of areas doing well, but also we then performed and were able to open up a little earlier than expected in some of the areas that we budgeted for, led to that surplus. In addition to this, the ownership approved a portion of their COVID restart grant funds from the province to offset their operating costs of reopening the pool, which was closed, as mentioned, for much of 2020, and other supplementary expenses as well to aid the society in its operations that were eliminated due to COVID-19, such as low-cost programs. We had left a number of staffing vacancies in finance and maintenance, as well as new sanitization equipment such as foggers and whole room sanitizers to do that. A lot of those are still being currently used, have been very valuable through Omicron as we go as the daycare every night. They put a fogger in there, and it actually, the room closes up and saves a lot of efficiencies and so on for the maintenance, for the cleaning aspect of it. At the time, it was mentioned that if it was not fully required, the remaining funds would be deferred to 2022, as the recovery for COVID was going to take more than 1 year. As you can see on the graph on the right, 209,000 of the restart funds has been included as deferral funds for 2022's operating budget to lower the overall requisition in relation to the pool. For 2021, the entire 690,000 operating cost for the pool was funded through the restart funds. Now we're looking as that's a reduction of 210,000 into next year, as due to those increased expectations on performance from the pool and other areas as well, are allowing to offset some of those costs. However, if we don't do that, that would have meant an extra 4% or a requisition increase for 2022 of 9.14%. So in discussions with the board, we're following through with what we had mentioned as far as if we didn't need it all in 2021, that we would push some of those funds into 2022 to reduce that impact, as far as when those funds were originally set out to be potentially over a 3-year term. So we've taken that forward into 2020. Into 2022. So now we move on into 2022 and looking at our 5-year, on the revenue side of the 5-year financial plan. We've got 2022 revenue expectations have been increased to align with what we did see through June through December. So it's a large increase in revenue expectations, bringing us closer to, back in 2020, the expectations are 6.4 million. We're up to 6.1. That does include the 210,000, as you can see in the top left of the graph there, of deferred COVID restart funds to bring us into next year. As we move into 2023 and through 2026, we start to see a move and a drift back into what was our previous sort of standards as far as increases go, getting us back down into sort of 2% to 2.5% each year. We look at doing that through applying a 2% fee increase through each year, as well as a 2% growth each year, which has been what our historical growth has been on the revenue side. On the expenses side of it for the 5 years, we've increased the expense expectations in step with what the revenue was, as to generate that more revenue as the demand is there. Of course, there's increased costs with staffing and supplies. as well as we've taken into account the increases in bargain wage increases. We just completed our, we have a 3-year agreement that began last year with QP 1978, as well as utility increases, the return to normal staffing levels, and the return to established capital replacement reserve contributions. That was a big part of our 2021 budget. I mean, there are many aspects to it, but we also, through the board, we discussed the reduction of our contribution to our capital reserve funds, knowing that we would have to get that back in place. As you're well aware, and on a future slide, we're still not out of the woods as far as our capital works reserve replacement funding is there, and where we're sitting with those, and so we need to get those numbers back up. The result of the requisition for 2022 is an increase of 5.14%. You'll see that we expect, as mentioned, to return to historical annual lifts of 2 to 2.5% by 2024, assuming the closures and capacity limits are behind us by those years. 2023 is still a slightly higher increase. We expect that we should see more of 2022 should be more like the second half of 2021, and then we're starting to continue to work our way out of this and being able to offer fully, assuming we can handle some of these staffing challenges that our industry and many industries are certainly realizing these days. Making up some of those expense increases for 2022, some of the areas that are non-discretionary in nature. We have a collective bargaining wage increases, as mentioned, of $77,000 for salaries and $35,000 for auxiliary staff. Hydro increases next year of $21,000. Water increases and parks of $19,000 on fees. Insurance premiums, insurance jumped a large amount this year, as a 20% increase in insurance costs. I imagine there's a number of factors that came into that, COVID being some of that. Garbage collection rate increases, sewer increases, for a total of $195,700 non-discretionary increases, or 4.1% increase over operating for next year. There are also a number of major site maintenance replacements scheduled for 2022. These include some lighting replacements, in particular the Q floor lighting, to change them all to LED lighting. That's been in our plan for a number of years, unfortunately keeps getting work on. So we're wanting to make sure we get that in place. Some pool filter replacements, some very large field maintenance equipment has to be replaced, a large roof replacing amongst other smaller projects. You'll notice there under new initiatives, we've included the skate park of just shy of 1.3 million. And we've also shown the funding for that in the top, in how we're funding this in the top right-hand side under grant, community and member contributions. So part of this is we have submitted a grant, a federal infrastructure grant that would cover 49%. We were supposed to receive notice originally late fall, which then turned into December, which we just found out today is still delayed. No decisions have been made, so hopefully in the coming weeks we will find out. We had a discussion at a owners meeting in the fall. It was definitely agreed upon by all the ownership that the project is very important and of high need in the West Shore. However, due to funding challenges that some of the owners are having due to COVID and aspects as far as the with the casino closure and so on for that length of time, that full funding by the ownership is not in the cards at this point. So what they have done is they directed me to include it in the project so that we have it, to ensure we have it in our financial plan. However, the funding will be looking at ideally the 49% from the federal infrastructure grant, and the remainder made up from some donations and agreements we have. For example, through Kiwanis, we have an agreement. There's been a number of donations just by there's been bottle drives, there's been different funding things that have been put on between partnership with staff and the skate board society. And then the other aspect of that is the contribution from the owners, which is still remaining at that same level that was presented to all of you a few years ago. So that increase hasn't changed. I believe Colwood actually has that set aside, and a couple of the other ownership does as well. And they all agreed they're comfortable with that funding level. That was between all five of the ownership. It was just that the remaining piece, that 49%, if it's not successful through this grant, we need to look at funding it elsewise. So through that process, the action item that was sent off with myself and the CAOs from from the owners that were there was to investigate the potential of a bank loan. So I've done that on our side, and then the CAO from View Royal has contacted MFA to look at how that funding model could work potentially through the ownership as well to cover that. Because it was definitely agreed upon when we first brought this forward a few years ago, it was about $300,000 less. So costs are growing rapidly. And if it's not done, it could now potentially price itself right out of the ability to do it. So on the next slide here, as mentioned, it's just starting to wrap some things together here. You'll see that the increase is 5.14%. That's comprised of 1.42% or 69,000 is related to operating. If you recall, a few slides ago, we had about 190,000 in non-discretionary increases on expenses. So we've dealt with most of that through increased expectations on both fees and expectations on performance. 2.26% of that, or 141,000 of the 270,000, is bringing our contribution for major repairs and maintenance reserves back up to where it was. And lastly, at that same owners meeting, it was quite a good discussion. We had quite a lengthy discussion around the capital reserve and asset management of the society. And at that time, a few years ago, I did the presentation on if we contribute an extra 60,000 every year and it grows by 60,000, that we're fully funded within 20 years. And that really had traction at that meeting, and it was put forward to include that as 1.14%. We were sitting at a 4% increase until that point. So those three pieces there between the operating increases that to bring our capital reserve back to what we used to and what was planned to, contributions, as well as the additional 60,000, which will continue to increase and bring that forward each year, brings us to the 5.14%. As mentioned, if we didn't use that additional 209,000 deferred restart funds, that would actually take us up to 9.14% as a request for 2021 or 2022. Sorry. This slide are the converted assessments that were received from each of the ownership financial departments. These are used to determine the portion of the requisition from each member, and I just put that in front of you as it shows how it's broken down. Colwood, as an example, has grown at 8.45% between the years, where the average is 7.14. So you'll see where in a future slide where the percentage of the increase for Colwood, that's why it's not the 5.14%. It's slightly higher because of the increase, the higher increase that Colwood has seen in their assessments. The requisition increase, as I mentioned there for Colwood, is a 6.42% increase, and that's due to that being higher than the average, or 71,880 for 2022. The next two slides look at the per capita increases, just to give you some frame of reference. Colwood's increase works out to using the stats from the latest Capital Regional District population statistics of a $3.91 increase per resident of Colwood for 2022. Or as here shows, a 0.47% increase on taxes based on the 2021 budgeted taxes for Colwood and what that increase means. So now we go into looking at the capital reserve continuity. As you can see, the yellow is where we point out where we're falling into negative values come 2024. So this is obviously a concern. That extra 60,000 helps offset that. Will keep that growth going. That will start to reverse some of those. If you recall from previous years, this was actually going to take into effect in 2023. So due to some changes on projected projects, as well as that 60,000 and increasing some of the reserve, getting those contributions back up to previous levels, we've been able to push that out to 2024. We'll continue to obviously adjust projects. We can't run into the negative. So we'll adjust projects as we go. We are working on the asset management plan still that I had mentioned this time last year. We're working with a consultant that will be brought forward, hopefully in the not too distant future, to the ownership to see and get comment on, to ensure that we can continue to fund these big projects. And they're really just their replacements. The whole asset management part of it is we're running low, and there's very little to no new initiative type projects built into this. That would certainly be a next phase for us. Right now, as we're just looking at operationally, we continue to be very strong. COVID obviously put a good blip in there, but even with that, we still came in on budget last year or in 2020. However, moving forward, the maintaining of these facilities to offer these programs is definitely an expensive endeavor. We have about 90 million in assets, or you do, that we look after for you. And keeping those up is quite an expensive endeavor. And lastly, in your project, we included the fees and charges for next year. This used to be a separate piece. It's now all wrapped up into one. The budget for 2022 takes these into effect in context with our values of our projections. We added slight increases into adult and senior and family, and we're trying to continue to hold youth rates. I'm trying to ensure it's regionally, we're all doing the same thing, trying to encourage youth access and to our facilities. So we're trying to spread, when we have to add a fee increase in there, we try to look at some of the areas that look towards more adults and whatnot, and try to hold youth to a lower level. Through that process, the West Shore staff do quite a comprehensive regional comparison, looking at the different Parks and Rec departments, as well as the Y on the West Shore, because they're definitely within the same region. So they do a comparison of all the fees on a number of different areas. We go over this with the board to ensure that they're comfortable where we're going, and we try to make sure that we're not pricing ourselves out of the market, because unfortunately Victoria is not all that big of a place, and people will cross borders easily as they do. And we want to make sure that we're providing a good value, but also being fiscally responsible and trying to apply the matching fee increases as close to the same percentages we're asking for tax increase, so that we're trying to spread that that requirement between the usership as well as tax base. And that concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you. I will just have you drop your screen off for me, and then I will look to council. I see hands up, so I will go first to Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship. I'd be happy to move the recommendation that council review and approve the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society 2022 budget and requisition request as presented, and happy to motivate if there's a seconder.
Okay, I will clear hands. And then I will thank you, Councillor Kobayashi I won't clear hands. Councillor Kobayashi has seconded it. So I will, everybody still has their hands up to ask questions as well. So we'll ask the questions after or during, motions, but Councillor Parkinson, the floor is still yours, if you wish to speak at all.
Oh, well, I will say a few things. Grant spoke quite a bit about the revenue and how it increased with the movies and whatnot, and the use of the golf course. I think he was a little modest, because he didn't talk about how hard and how hard they worked and how flexible they were with their staffing and everything throughout COVID to maintain their cost control. And they had people jumping from position to position to position to fill holes and not have to replace them. So they just did an absolutely excellent job, in my opinion. In fact, probably would be good for a case study at a business school, the way they danced and stick handled their way through that thing. So very happy. I think obviously in Colwood, we're starting to understand the need for the capital reserves for the asset management, and that's bumped it up a little bit. And the skateboard park, we can all just keep our fingers crossed on. So I can't compliment the staff down at the rec center enough at all. They did an excellent job. Thank you,
Councillor Park. Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Actually, these questions are probably directed more towards Jen. First of all, I just congratulations, Councillor Parkinson. You actually are letting us put away a rainy day fund for capital projects. Yee, that's different for you. Anyways, I just have just two questions, please. The first one, Jen, is how is, when they determine what our portion of the funding is for the rec center, it's obviously property tax value plus population, and they seem to do that throughout the CRD, like the GVPL, the Greater Victoria Public Library. But here's my question: is why are the numbers all different? Why, when I looked at, I remember the numbers from the Greater Victoria Public Library, and they had a higher population for Colwood, whereas the West Shore Parks and Rec use a lower population. So is there a common way that we should be doing this? Because it seems to be all over the place. I guess I'm shooting myself in the foot, because potentially we could be paying more, but I'm just got to ask the question, because it just seems like we're not consistent. And what is the official way of doing this? That's my first question. And my second question, I guess, is more towards Grant. A great job, Grant, by the way, in preparing the budgets. They were very well done, very easy to follow. But that second one is when you were talking about you got to keep yourself comparable in the fees. You know, I was just wondering how we compete with the YMCA right now. And by the way, I don't agree with the increase in seniors. Now that I'm a senior, just kidding. So who wants to go first?
Oh, did you want to go first, Jen?
I'm happy to jump in through Mayor Martin. Councillor Kobayashi, to answer your first question, the mechanism with which budget requisitions are shared between participating owners or participating municipalities depends on under which agreement we are operating. Grant, correct me if I'm wrong, West Shore Parks and Rec, that requisition is calculated based on assessment value only. It is not a proportionate split between assessment and population.
Thank you.
And with that, I will need you to remind me of what your second question was.
Well, I think it's more towards Grant. I was just wondering how competitive we are with the YMCA, because that's our biggest competitor out here in the West Shore. Are we okay? You don't have to have exact numbers, but are we about the same or?
Yeah, through the chair. We're actually significantly cheaper. When they first opened, it definitely caused us some challenge because they had some special rates. Their membership is a fair amount more than ours is. So we're more in line with the rest of the rec departments within the region. Our drop-in fee is quite a bit cheaper, and our passes now as well. They have a few levels of passes, so and like you said, I'm not 100% familiar with what the exact numbers are, but we are cheaper than them in most of the programming, if not all.
Okay, thanks very much, Grant.
Thank you, Councillor Day.
Thank you. Just very good presentation, and certainly believe in both the vision for West Shore Parks and Rec, as well as know that there is a great deal of good happening for our community through the West Shore Parks and Recreation Society. But there's a couple of items in the budget that I think should have been able to be anticipated. So I'm just going to ask you directly about those two. One is the pool filter and pump. That's about $100,000 in cost. And it seems like something that should be predictable.
Oh, it is predictable. That's within our 20-year capital plan. That's why it's on there. It's due now. And so that is something that we plan for. So all of those items through the chair, through all those items that were that are on that capital list, it's very rare. Our maintenance team actually is an absolute amazing job at a 25-year capital plan. Our issue has been the funding side, and that's why we're trying to marry the two with that asset management plan. But every one of those projects are definitely anticipated. It's very rare that we get caught off guard. They do a very good job as far as planning those go. Is there any way we could present that more clearly, so that would maybe make, I guess, because you never get to see our 25-year capital plan, and you wouldn't want to, it's huge.
Well, I would like to see it, but and I have seen it when I was a member of the board. Okay. But it just seemed the way you presented it, highlighting those things as costs that you had to come up with the funding for this year, that they were unanticipated because you didn't have money set aside to deal with them. The other item was the roof, because that is a relatively new building.
Oh, through the chair. That section of the roof is the old part. It's over top of the original. So the expansion that happened in 2008, 2009, that part is the newer. This is actually some of the sections of the old roof.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that helps me understand it better. But also roofs and other capital items. It does feel like we should be preparing for them in advance. And I know COVID has put us all on our ear, but I would be interested to see next year when you bring your budget forward to tell us about what you're planning for the future in your capital plan as well.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. So Grant, I just have a couple questions for you, just line item things. 200, I'm rounding, $250,000 as an expense for food and beverage. Do you know off the top of your head what the offset was on the income side of that? Like, is it balanced it out, or does it, and I don't need precise numbers. I'm just, does it balance?
It actually makes some, because oops. I'm just making sure I wasn't moved through the chair. The all that's left actually of food and beverage for us is basically the Q Center concessions. We right now haven't reestablished the rest of it, so it's actually fully balanced and actually makes a little bit of revenue.
Awesome, thank you. The second question I have for you is the 19K increase on water.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because of environmental issues? For example, we had 40-degree weather last year, or is this having to do with rate increases?
It's rate increases.
It's rate increases. Okay, thank you. And then the last thing I would say to this council, again, it's just talking about the skateboard park. Year one, when I was on the board, when the first time it was presented to the West Shore Park board, it was a 600K ask. And now 5 years later, for the exact same park, they haven't changed it at all. It's now 1.27. We have to do this now. We can't continue to wait. We're going to, as Mr. Brown has said, we're going to cost ourselves out of this, and then the community will never get a rec center. So I really hope that grant comes through, but if that grant doesn't come through, we need to be actively approaching it in a different way. I'm just so worried and sad to see that there's a possibility we may never get it if we continue to see these escalation in costs. That's all for me. Looking one last time for hands, not seeing any, so I will call the question. Those in opposition to the motion? Nobody opposes. Thank you. And Mr. Brown, thank you for attending this evening. We're going to jump now to 6.4. This is Ms. Hempting, our Director of Finance, regarding our 2022 service review approvals.
Thank you, Mayor Martin.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just going to stop you just for a second. Councillor Jansen, I see your hand up.
Sorry, I might be a bit early, but I was just anticipating accepting the service review as presented to us here. I'm not sure. Jen,
okay.
I didn't mean to usurp any presentation you might have, but I thought I'd try and accelerate this.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I'll come back to you. Ms. Hempting.
In the spirit of acceleration, the draft 2022 service profiles, they've simply been updated for the recommendations that were made through those series of finance and governance meetings. Beyond that, I really don't have a formal presentation. We are looking for council's approval of these service profiles, and we will then be incorporating them into the draft financial plan that will be before you next month with budget deliberations beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Jansen who's made the motion. Do I have a seconder? Moved by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a quick question, Jen. I know we're coming up to the budgets and everything, and so the only thing that still bothers me, I'm not losing sleep over it, mind you, but it still bothers me, and it just, and that's the justification for the HR, like 3 bodies for the number of people that we have here. And I just did a quick scan and asked some other municipalities, and our numbers seem to be a bit high for the number of people that we have here. I guess my question is, can you inquire? I mean, can we sort of, is this really the right number? That's the only one that really gets me right now. I know it was sort of defended, but not quite to my satisfaction, even at the service review meetings. So I was wondering if we can just relook at that number, please. For this, like I said, for the size of staff we have, and the fact that we're still part of the Greater Victoria Labor Relations, and so we still got that cost on top of that, and we got 3 HR people. So I guess it's just not sitting well with me right now. And I see that our CEO has come online and he's smiling at me. Oh. Anyway, so I'm asking the question, and that's the only question I have on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Mr. Earl.
Thank you, Worship, and through to Councillor Kobayashi. I just wanted to make sure, Councillor Kobayashi, that you were aware that we have two functional HR folks in the traditional sense of the word, and one occupational safety officer who sits within this area. And when we look at organizations of a similar size of an employee group, two folks dedicated to HR is not an extraordinary number whatsoever. And in fact, my suggestion would be it would be at or below average. But I just wanted to make sure you were aware that the third item was
that's very true. Yeah, that's very true. And I didn't know what was included in people's numbers, to tell you the truth. So thank you very much for that observation. But I guess it still comes down to the other question that we have not resolved in the 3 years or 4 years that we're going on council. When I originally joined council, we were pulling ourselves out of the labor relations, and then we're almost 4 years into our term, and we have delayed that decision. So it's coming, budget time's coming up, and I think we should make a decision on it one way or the other.
Councillor Parkinson is the Colwood rep on Greater Victoria Labour Relations, so I will reach out to Councillor Parkinson, and we'll see how we can bring that to the council table in the near future. Is there any other discussion in regards to the service review? Councillor Day.
Thank you. I feel that it's important that I share that I'm not feeling that this council has really scrutinized our plan thus far. We've I think kind of taken the easy way out a little bit, going with the status quo and not rocking the boat, which I think is very good for productivity of our workforce, but may not lead to the best result in terms of what's actually accomplished by the city in comparison to council's goals. So I don't want to throw anybody under the bus at this point in time, but I do think that as we go through our budget deliberations, it's going to become more obvious that some of the things that we haven't taken a hard look at before may need to have a hard look. So I'm just trying to flag that so that we can try to manage this process in the best possible way. And, you know, I don't want to, you know, get all the way to the budget meetings and then surprise staff. You know, council didn't really mean it when they said that the service review was going to be a status quo. So I'm not 100% comfortable with the work that we've done thus far on the service review. Thank you.
So Councillor Day, thank you. Councillor Day, are you suggesting we should take this back to committee and continue the work of that then? Is that your suggestion?
I don't know if others on council share my feelings, but that is how I feel. I feel like we haven't clearly refined our staff to meet our goals.
Okay, I understand. I guess I'm trying to understand what you think the next step should be with that. Like, do you have a suggestion? I'm trying to facilitate. If there's a concern about the service review, I'm just wondering, should we go back to service review?
I just don't know what the best way forward is. I don't think we're going to. I feel like our service review discussions were uninformed by the realities of the situation the city is in. So we looked at our priorities and we looked at what staffing we had. There was very little reason to make big changes. Maybe that's not something anyone's interested in doing, in which case I don't want to waste your time, but I'm not, there are a number of areas where the city is doing things that I'm not sure I feel comfortable with what we're doing. So I'm just trying to be honest.
All right, thank you. I will go next on the speakers list to, it is Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'm not even sure how to process this conversation. We embarked upon a process that was competently facilitated by staff. Presentations were remarkable and coherent. It was overseen by our chief administrator, who I thought did a bang-up job. I am entirely comfortable with where I'm at with this service review, 100%. And I believe it all comes back again at the budget discussions. And if Councillor Day has opinions at that time, vote for or against what she's uncomfortable with. But I will not in any way support taking a step backwards on the budget. In fact, I would like to see this accelerated. Really, those are my thoughts. And I would like to move this forward, Your Worship.
Thank you. Do I have a motion yet? I can't remember. I do? I already have it. Oh, okay, I already have the motion. So we're just in discussion. The next on my list is Councillor Parkinson and then Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding like a politician, I think I'm going to come down in the middle of those last two comments. Councillor Day, I get it. You know, there are hundreds and hundreds of numbers that we're looking at in these pages. And I'm sure we could all sort of wonder about one here and one there. But I lean towards Councillor Jansen. I thought we got a lot of good information in front of us. We tried to debate it the best we could. Is it perfect? Probably not. If there's anything glaring, will it get caught in budget? Quite likely. But it's not bad. And honestly, to find and nitpick at this level at this time, I don't think now's the time. You know, I'm intrigued that there may be some major things that could be done to adjust it, but I don't have any at the top of my head, so I'm not going down that path until I hear something that resonates with me. So I guess I'm with the Councillor Jansen. Let's move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter. Councillor Baxter, you're muted.
Right. I think council's job is to review everything carefully. And if there's something we don't like about it, we need to be able to suggest a change or suggest a line of inquiry, or at least be specific about what we don't like about it. I think to express general unease is actually a line that takes us nowhere. And therefore, I'm absolutely siding with Councillor Jensen on this. I think we've done our due diligence, and I'm not happy to have somebody suggest that we haven't. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 6.5. This is Habitat for Humanity Victoria creating affordability home ownership opportunities in Colwood. This is a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole for January 17th. May I get a mover and seconder, and then we can discuss the motion if there's any. Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi moves it. Moves it. Councillor Jansen seconds it. Is there discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 6.6, Community Social Planning Council. This is the Colwood Rent Bank and Housing Stability Project. This is a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole of January 17th. May I get a mover and seconder, please? And then we can look at discussion. Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Day. Thank you. Is there any discussion? I'm just going to lower your hands just so I know. Excuse me. Lower all hands. Is there any discussion in regards to the rent bank motion? Councillor Parkinson.
I assume this would come to the same workshop we're talking about above.
I will look to staff.
Thank you for that question. Yes, it would behoove us to look at this in the context of the other options that are available to council at the workshop if council directs it to take place.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will. Oh, I do. Sorry, Councillor Parkinson. Did you have another question? My apologies.
Sorry, I tried to lower it.
Oh, yeah, that was you and I doing it at the same time. Councillor Day.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that the reason that I am supporting the rent bank is because it can make a huge difference. And it does exist in other parts of the capital region. And we do have the advantage of there being federal matching funds, or is it, I can't remember, it might be provincial, can't quite remember, but there is matching funding coming into this. So it's not something where we're just doing this by ourselves.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition to the motion? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 6.7, this is the public art funding policy. Again, this is a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole of January 17th. Looking for a motion, Councillor Parkinson has moved the motion from committee, seconded by Councillor Logan. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 6.8, this is the development variance permit for 3438 Ryder Heshdall Way. This is a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole of January 17th. Moved by Councillor Jansen, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Is there discussion? Oh no, sorry, you were not seconding it. You were looking to discuss.
Well, I will second it for discussion, but I have something to say about it.
Yes, I will come back to you. So great. So I do have movers and seconders, correct? So I will then look to my list, and the first up is Councillor Baxter.
So unfortunately, I wasn't here for the Committee of the Whole meeting, so I have to do my bit here. And I think that the unusual configuration of this lot has created great difficulty in minimizing the paved area and in providing the number of trees we would normally see in the development of this size. So I think there's a danger of producing an ugly black heat island in the middle of the housing. And I think that the developer has proposed 3 different things that I think mitigate that. But I would like to see those 3 things incorporated as conditions of the variance, because I think they're important. So I'm moving that the following conditions be added to the development variance permit. That the parking area is shown in a herringbone pattern in Fig 2 site plan.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you just for a second, Councillor Baxter. You provided this motion to staff earlier, did you not?
I did, yes.
Staff, could you please put up the motion as Councillor Baxter reads it? Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Baxter.
Right, so the parking area is shown in a herringbone pattern in Fig 2, the site plan, that's in the report to committee, including the floral design be finished in permeable brick paving, that the remaining paved areas in Fig 2 be finished in concrete slab or brick paving, and that the 4 large trees shown on the aforementioned plan be of a large spreading deciduous species and provided with a sufficient root volume to achieve their full anticipated growth size?
Thank you. So Councillor Kobayashi and Councillor Day, I have recorded that you guys are wishing to speak. I will come back to you, but I'm going to lower everybody's hands right now. And I will look for a seconder on Councillor Baxter's motion. And this would be an amendment to the motion. Seconded by Councillor Day. Thank you. Councillor Baxter, do you wish to motivate?
I think effectively I've already done that. I hope so anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? I'm not seeing anybody's hands, so I will call the question on the amendment. Those in opposition, please raise your virtual hands. Nobody opposes. So that becomes part of the main motion. So we will circle back to the main motion. Councillor Baxter, just confirming you're done. Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I would like to just add an additional condition. And this is just based on the concerns of the neighbors. You know, one of the biggest issues, understanding the problem, what the problem is. And it's not parking itself, because parking, he meets the requirements as per the OCP. But one of the big issues, of course, is once you would allow rentals and we have illegal suites in there, then parking becomes an issue. So I request that another condition be put on, and that the developer actually puts in the condition that within the strata that no suites. I don't know how to word this nicer, but you know, and this way we're assured that we do have the parking, and you know you're not putting suites in here or subletting the rooms, and so which creates parking issues. So I'd like to add that additional condition.
Councillor Kobayashi, just as a clarification on your motion, when you talk about suites, are you talking about a secondary suite, or are you talking about somebody owning the unit and renting a room in their primary?
Secondary suites.
Okay.
It's very much like I live in a strata right now, and our strata condition is that we cannot have secondary suites, so we don't have parking issues.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify where you were going with that. Councillor Day, are you seconding that motion, or did you put your hand up? I did have you down as for discussion later. Were you seconding that?
Point of order, Your Worship.
Okay, did you want to do a point of order before I look for a seconder?
Yeah.
Okay,
because that's my point of order.
Okay. I think I know where you're going.
I've already made an amending motion, and I think we should deal with that and then deal with this one separately.
Your amending motion was passed, Councillor Baxter, and so it's now part of the main motion.
Okay, sorry.
And so where we're at right now is Councillor Kobayashi has now made a second amendment to the motion. And
obviously
right
I'm
now
totally lost. Sorry.
That's okay. I've lowered Councillor Day's hand just because I'm looking for a seconder.
Happy second.
You are seconding that. Okay, thank you. Before I look for discussion, may I have staff just comment on that if there's anyone around? It was my understanding that suites would not be allowed there anyways, but Ms. Clark.
Hi there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can certainly have a section 219 placed on the property that would restrict secondary suites. At this time, there's not a prohibition on that on suites within townhome sites, so it is certainly.
Okay, thank you. Then I will go to discussion. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Day, are you looking to discuss?
Sorry, no, not discussing the amendment.
Okay, I will come back to you on the main motion. On the amendment, I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. Thank you. So that becomes part of the main motion as well. Councillor Day. Oh, excuse me, Councillor Kobayashi. Is there anything else? No. Okay. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Appreciate the motions that I do think make this a better proposal going forward. However, I still cannot support even the amended motion. So I'm just letting everyone know that.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. So we, just to be clear with all the council, we are on the main motion now. So those in opposition, please raise your hands, or virtual hands, excuse me. Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 6.8. This is small lot subdivision. This is a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole of January 17th. I'm just going to lower hands. Councillor Day, were you looking to move the motion, or was that from the last?
Left up, I think, from the last.
Thank you. Okay. I'm just going to lower everybody's hands. May I get a mover and seconder on 6.8, please? Or excuse me, 6.9. Do I have any? Sorry, Councillor Day, did you just put your hand up again? I think I just accidentally lowered it. I think we're doing the same thing I did with Councillor Parkinson.
No, I'm not raising my hand.
You are not.
I am not.
Okay, that is me. Then hold on 2 seconds. I'm going to lower it one more time. There we go. Thank you. It's lowered. You are not raising your hand. Perfect. Councillor Jansen is moving the motion.
My hand is actually up.
Thank you. And Councillor Logan has seconded it. Thank you. Looking for discussion. Councillor Day, then Baxter. And excuse me, sorry, Councillor Jansen, did you want to discuss? Raise your hand up just to move it. Okay, thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I made several comments at committee about the small lots. I believe that they continue to create problems in our community. Not that they're not valuable, but I don't believe that the plan that we have will result in benefits to the larger community. There may be, you know, some people who need homes for sure. A home is better than no home, but small lot bring with them inherent difficulties of living very close to one another. And I don't feel that this captures a vision for the future that is one that I or members of my family would want to be in. So I don't think that passes the test for me of getting my support.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, then Jansen.
I just have a comment on the survey. I think that it's been well proven by social scientists that people who have recently spent a large amount of money on something they carefully chose are extremely reluctant to tell you what, at any point that they've made a mistake. People are always very pleased with their huge expenditures, unless, like a friend of mine, bought a brand new vehicle and it caught fire the next day and was reduced to a pile of molten aluminum. I think he was displeased, but generally people do not want to admit that they made a mistake with a huge expenditure. So that's just a general comment on doing that type of survey. And I think there might be other questions that could have been asked, such as, you know, was there something that you would have paid for if it had been on the market, but it wasn't on the market? So was there something you were looking for? And I will say that when we were knocking on doors to get elected, I did talk to a great number of people on Regency Place, and specifically asked them all whether they liked the place. And they were absolutely overwhelmingly enthusiastic, despite the small lot nature, or maybe because of it. But personally, I look forward to more developments like that. But I just think we need to be careful about surveys and how they work.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen, your hand's up again. Is that for a reason? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. As the mover for this, you know, by my read, we're expecting a bunch of information to come back to us before this ever forms a part of the official community plan. So we're putting the cart before the horse to say that we're not in favor of it yet because there's nothing before us. And I think offering this type of creative solution is important for people who can't afford a 10,000 square foot home. The idea is it's meant to bridge people, a place to start, and then once your family grows, you look for something different. So these options in our community are important, and providing as many of them and being as creative as possible is important, and I think worthy. And I plan to look at this in great detail when it comes to us, because I do know there are challenges for smaller, tighter communities. But by my read, the risk is minimal here, and really we're not voting on anything other than a report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 6.10, this is Colwood Corners. The lower people's hands. Thank you. 6.10, Colwood Corners, Building 1 encroachment. This is a recommendation from the January 17th. Moved by Councillor Day. Is that correct, Councillor Day? Councillor Day?
Sorry, just left up from the last one.
Okay, thank you. Then I see Councillor Parkinson has moved it. Councillor Logan has seconded it. I will drop everybody's hands and then look for discussion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. I see no hands. That passes unanimously. Moving on to 6.11, this is the City of Langford referral. This is a rezoning amendment to the CD4 zone Olympic View. This is a recommendation from the January 17th Committee of the Whole. Councillor Baxter, are you moving it or are you wishing to discuss?
Yes.
You're moving it. Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. I'm going to lower hands. Discussion. Once I lower hands, just a moment. Okay, discussion. Councillor Day, and then Kobayashi.
Thanks. There was some emails that went out regarding this and the potential for understanding the future development of Colwood through requiring more, sorry, my brain has gone thin here, more transportation analysis for each development. And I'm just wondering if there is an opportunity for staff to comment on where we might get greater information from our developments in the future.
Staff? Mr. Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I ask Councillor Day to clarify the question?
Sure. So when we were having developments come forward, we quite often, there is the perception that when the developer pays for the traffic consultant, that they get the answer that they were looking for from the consultant. And to get around that, in the past, Colwood has asked developers to contribute the money for the traffic consultant to the City of Colwood, and then the City of Colwood has engaged the traffic consultant to ensure that we are getting unbiased and unfiltered information. And that was the subject of an email to members of council, inquiring whether we could bring together the traffic details such that we would understand better the long-term implications of the transportation in Colwood, and specifically the South Colwood Latoria corridor and the demands that are being placed on it through both development in Colwood and in the surrounding municipalities.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, when an applicant comes forward with a project and the city requires a traffic impact analysis, the city has opportunity to approve the terms and conditions of that analysis in advance of that work being done. That's the opportunity for the city to make sure that we will receive the information that we need to help guide future decision making. The city then relies with a professional reliance approach on the professionalism of the firm that is doing the work on behalf of the city on behalf of the applicant at the request of the city. And so the city uses that professional reliance approach, as many other organizations do. And that way we connect the costs of development to those who are causing it. We have used it successfully in the past. The city could certainly use the other approach that you've described. From administration's perspective, though, we trust the professionalism of the traffic engineers that are involved in traffic impact analysis, such as the ones that would be involved in this proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I was the one that actually put the amendment, an addition to this particular motion. And if I can, I hope I did it in writing, so I hope it can be shown on the screen here. But
yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
But let me give you a perspective here. And you know, I'm not on a witch hunt. That, you know, we could look at this going forward or looking backwards, right? I don't want to, you know, go back and witch hunt and say, were the terms of reference right? You know, what happened here? You know, obviously, you know, we didn't have all the information. And we were making $1 million, potentially millions of dollars, dollar decisions here based on not everything being available. And I actually went back to previous meetings where I actually found where I questioned what was happening in South Langford and why were those numbers being included in this traffic analysis. And at that time, it was a pretty wishy-washy answer. I must admit, no one says they weren't, and no one was saying they were. But I did find them. and so this got me to thinking a lot more right now. And I'm not questioning professionalism in any of this. I want to make this very, very clear right now. But to get a memo, and it was apparently an internal memo, but it's still a memo that was signed off by a company, and they gave it to us, and then they started the panic with me. I'm going to say that's just totally unacceptable. And I am not a traffic expert, and neither is, and nor are any persons around the table at council. So this was just that added. The reason I had this right now is I'm not feeling comfortable right now with even when the TIA does come out, like where, you know, do we have the expertise around the table? Do we have the expertise on staff? If someone will stand up right now and say, yes, we do, okay, then I'll back off right now. But I will challenge that right now. This is one of the most important decisions this council has to make. Because we get this wrong, you know, we're gonna create a mess here. So I think that we just need to have, we're writing our own terms of reference for whoever it's paying for, but we're writing the terms of reference. We're paying the person to do the consulting for us, to look at all the options that we have, look at to provide that expert opinion on the TIA. Is it overkill? Well, to me, I haven't seen signs of things that have always been correct with us. I mean, just take a look. Another recent example. Remember, let's go back to the adventure down Machosen Road when they told us it was 2,000 cars. Well, it was based on a 2008 study and no one updated it. I'm not saying it was Watt and Bunt in this case. It was a totally different firm. But the problem is that here we were making decisions based on inaccurate information. So this has got me very concerned, and hence I have made this motion. And so that's my motivation here. I think that we do need this extra hand here because it's such an important decision. And that's all I have to say, Mayor.
Thank you. I will, I'm going to lower hands just for a moment. Councillor Baxter, I will come back to you. Do I have a seconder to the amendment? Councillor Parkinson. So we have a amendment on the table. So I will look for, I'm sorry, I'm just lowering hands. I will look for discussion. Is there a discussion in regards? Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I support this motion. I recognize that, the issues we're dealing with are many years in the future. We're trying to make projections for traffic flows, 15, 20 years in the future, and none of us have a crystal ball. And what transportation is going to look like in 15 or 20 or 25 years is really hard to determine. I think Colwood and all the other West Shore municipalities are going to do their best to attract employment locally to reduce the need to travel. More people are probably going to work from home, either part or full time. Transportation will be walking, cycling, scootering, buses, car share, ride share, maybe even a ferry or some other form of rapid transit. And it's obvious to me that the luxury of single occupant vehicle operation will be reduced. Likely not eliminated, but it's just going to be harder and less cumbersome. So I guess I'm not looking for transportation analysis to use as a club against rezoning proposals. I just want to be given the best possible advice, complete with the assumptions it's based on and the range of possible outcomes that would occur if equally probable assumptions were taken. Give me the straight goods. Don't have to sugarcoat things. Tell me straight. And that way, myself, future council members can assess the possible consequences and weigh that against the benefits that the citizens would achieve from a rezoning. So, I mean, surely that's job one, is for all councils, just to make sure we have accurate, complete information to make the decisions on. So I'm supporting this motion. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Thank you. I have Councillor Logan, then Baxter, then Jansen. Councillor Logan.
Oh, Your Worship, I think Councillor Baxter had his hand up for quite a while for me. So he's,
okay, then I will go to Councillor Baxter first. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, I think there's a difficulty here, and I think it is the fact that as many people have bemoaned, we have 13 municipalities of various sizes. Our traffic drives from one to the other to the other. And what happened here more than anything else is that after the so-called joint memo was read and absorbed by us, there were proposed increases and maybe actual increases in zoning development that in Langford. And that, as I heard the engineer speak at the last meeting, and as I read the memo that they'd written, that's the main source of change is what's happening in another municipality. And we have no way of controlling that. We have no way of even knowing what the intent is in that other municipality beyond their OCP, but that doesn't give you the full picture. And it's something we have to accept, that neighboring municipalities on any side and beyond can make changes to their development in ways that may impact the traffic that wants to come through Colwood. And there's nothing we can do about it. If we were to be able to know everything that, say, Langford might do in the future, and we were to be able to predict that, is it our intent to spend money to increase the capacity of our roads to deal with that? If we were to be able to know that, is it our intent to reduce the amount of development in Colwood for fear of getting in the way of traffic coming from other municipalities? If we're going to spend money on this extra study after many studies have been done, we have to ask ourselves, what will we do with the answer? If we're not going to increase the capacity of our roads to deal with traffic coming from elsewhere, and we're not going to reduce our development in order to allow development elsewhere, then what are we going to do? And the best suggestion I've heard is Councillor Parkinson's original proposal, which is to reach out to Langford and possibly to others at the same time to sit down and discuss this and see if we can get agreement on how we're going to deal with this traffic. So I think that's the right thing to do, and not go and do another study where we just find out what we already know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Logan, then Jansen.
Thank you, Worship. I actually couldn't have articulated that any better than Councillor Baxter. I agree. I won't be supporting this. This all came out of a draft memo, of which we didn't even see the complete document. And I understand the intention. However, I think we're really jumping the gun here. You know, I prefer to hear the professional recommendations from our staff on our next steps. I think council has charted, thanks to Councillor Parkinson, a good path forward now. And what comes out of that may lead us to some future studies, but I don't think we're there yet. And certainly I'm not willing to expose the taxpayer to having to pay for that before it's really needed. And you know, I do say I was a bit stunned by some of the language in the motion, that we hire a highly credible traffic consultant. And what does that mean? To me, that calls into the credibility of the professionalism of the consultants that have done the previous work. And so, you know, that didn't sit well with me, I'll be honest with you. And I'm not sure where that wording came from, but I won't be supporting this. I think it's way too premature. And I think Councillor Parkinson's motion of last week is a good first step. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen, then Dave.
Thank you, and I appreciate some of the thoughts from other council members, because I do feel like I want to support Councillor Kobayashi's motion. I was going to suggest a sum amendment, which was that it be funded by the people or the developers who are participating in the joint memo. But I'll come back to that in a second. I do wonder, Councillor Kobayashi, if we should await some of the outcomes that will be coming to us. And I do believe there is a good time for this. And I wonder if that's now or in the future. But I can maybe come back to me in a moment once everybody's had a chance, please, Mayor Martin.
Certainly. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I will be supporting the motion for the simple reason that we have already invested $4 million in that traffic circle at Veterans Memorial Parkway and Latoria. And that investment needs to be protected in the best way possible. And it's not about calling out any of the professionals who have been involved, but it's a difficult problem. And as time goes by, we should get more data to help us understand the complex situation of traffic in South Colwood. But I have been participating and reading the traffic studies since 1999. And the traffic studies have been rather disjointed and not greatly followed up on for quite a few years in the middle there. And that's not really anyone's fault. It's the ebb and flow of work in municipalities. But the Latoria Road corridor has significant challenges and limitations, and we have to do our best to protect that infrastructure for our community. And it isn't about calling anybody out or stopping anybody from doing what they want to do in their own municipality. It's just about the reality of any time, all of those traffic techs will tell you that you can compare traffic to water. It goes wherever there's the least resistance. So if we open up a nice brand new road in Colwood, you can bet your bottom dollar that anyone who lives nearby to Colwood will try that route out as a way to get where they're going. It's what we all do. We just need to find the best way to ensure that we can get a plan in place that we can upgrade in the future and live with as long as we have to live with it. So I think it's a great motion. I didn't see that sort of suggestion that we were calling anybody out in the wording. It never even crossed my mind. And the only thing I'm looking to do is to put our hearts, I guess, at rest, knowing that we have a plan that's based on figures that, it's okay to check figures a couple of times. Auditors do it all the time. We're not saying that anybody made a mistake or was nefarious in any way, but more heads on a problem is going to get a better result. Thank you.
Councillor Kobayashi, then Jansen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Martin. I love Councillor Jensen's suggestion. I really didn't plan on paying for this ourselves, that's for sure. I do like the idea of having the developers. And I talked to one specific one, and he actually questions that report too, or the draft. And you're right. Until the TIA is actually issued and we get to look at it, who knows? But I'd rather have a set of eyes that has some expertise that can advise us. Come on, folks, what's going to change? What's changing? That's the reality here. And I do take great offense in being called out on calling someone unprofessional. What I meant by highly credible, organization, it's not a guy like me who's a consultant. You want to have the legs behind that, the people that will stamp it off. That's what I meant by that. And if there's a better way of putting it, so be it. Let's put it a different way. but that it was not meant to attack the organizations, because I'm just saying mistakes have been made, and we spent too much money on this, and are about to spend a lot more money. And if that means all of a sudden that every one of these intersections is what do they call it, red light, or it's beyond the capacity, that's going to affect our future decisions and future council's decisions on how much more density you're going to put along Latoria Road. So they're important things that we have to know. And frankly, the expertise is not around the table. Maybe it is within staff. That's why I sent the motion to our CAO, and he could have told me, that it's here, so go away. That didn't happen. So that's all I meant. There was nothing mean about this. This was to protect our taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen.
Just as a point of order, it sounded to me like Councillor Kobayashi was going to add this to his motion. It may negate a sub amendment. I'm not sure how you feel process-wise, Mr. Mayor.
It's up to you. It's up to you guys. You guys can you can make an amendment to an amendment if you want, or you can talk to Doug or excuse me, Councillor Kobayashi and.
Sorry, if Doug's amenable to that suggestion and adds it to his amendment, and the seconder is good, then we'll move right along. Just a bad cleanup. I agree with much of what's been said. I think having some faith, but also seeking independent, fresh eyes onto the numbers as they come to us to verify on behalf of the community, I don't think it's too much to ask from our developer group. That's all. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Mr. Earl. I had a question, but I think Mr. Earl's going to answer the question. Yeah, Mr. Earl.
Thank you, Worship. The referral from Langford is time sensitive, and should the motion that's on the floor now pass, it would require staff to seek agreement from the group that originally funded the joint memo to fund an update to the memo. And that process might take time, and time will pass, and we may kind of lose some of the opportunity we have to influence the referral that Langford has provided for us. And so I just provide that as information. We cannot compare, the writers of the joint memo aren't party to this referral, and compelling the writers of the joint memo to take an action as a result of this deferral isn't straightforward. Administration can certainly make that approach.
Thank you. Is there any other hands? Seeing none, my comments are, I have the same concerns as what Mr. Earl just talked about, that I worry that we lose our voice as a council if we choose to pass this motion and drag it out. I'm not saying that it's not something that could be addressed in the future, but I think as we're all aware, this is a very time sensitive thing, and my experience with the municipality of Langford is that they are not patient, and they will not sit 6 months or a year waiting for us to respond. Councillor Parkinson.
I wonder if we could get the motion, or I guess it's the amendment that Councillor Kobayashi made, put back up on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess I'm confused whether the getting the joint memo people to pay for is part of that motion or part of a proposed amendment to that motion.
Councillor Kobayashi, is this your motion? Confirming.
Yes, it is, Mayor Martin.
It's what you intended, and with the amendment.
With the amendment that we get the developers to pay for.
Right. Councillor Parkinson, do you have anything else?
No, I think while I'm supportive of the motion, I think the amendment complicates things a bit too much for me. So I'll probably vote against this, trying to convince the authors of the joint memo or the purchasers of the joint memo to get involved. I think we're looking at some pretty significant numbers. If the city has to pay out of its own pocket for some traffic advice on something as important as this, I wouldn't break my heart. My concern was that the admittedly draft internal memo, whatever it was we saw, just blithely recommended that we should 4-lane the chosen road. And I think we need to really step back and get some advice. So I'm going to support the original motion from Councillor Kobayashi, but not the amendment to have the joint memo people pay for it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. So, however, Councillor Parkinson, I didn't have an amendment because it was Councillor Kobayashi, the original mover and seconder, accepted it as part of the main motion. So did you want to try and sever it?
Jeez, those guys bloody well screwed it up, didn't they? Yeah, I'm going to ask for it to be severed, if I may.
Okay, so I'm just going to try and find where would I sever that. Sorry, I'm looking for it. Sorry?
Right after C.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so so right now I will look at severing the motion so that we'll go A, B, and C, and then we'll look at the final one to, I will call a second vote on that the report be funded by the developers who are participating in the joint memo.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I will call, so what I'm doing right now, just so nobody's confused, is I'm calling the question on the amendment of just A, B, and C, and not the funding. So those in opposition to this motion, please raise your hands, your virtual hands.
Can I just get a clarification?
Certainly.
So Councillor Parkinson's original motion, is that passed now? Is that already been passed? Or
it has
it
not. No, Councillor, no. So where we're at right now is Councillor what number am I on? 6.11. We had a mover and seconder on the main motion, which you might have got a little confused at because I believe this was Councillor Parkinson's motion of last week, which Councillor Logan referred to. So we have the main motion on the table. Then Councillor Kobayashi has moved an amendment to that motion, which is what you're seeing on screen right now. And so presently we are voting what is on screen. If it passes, it will become part of the main motion, and then I'll call the vote on the main motions.
The one kind of weakness is in that is that there's two separate actions there would be end up in the motion if the amendment passed. One to approach Langford to deal with traffic, and the other to do our own study without any indication of whether they're dependent upon each other. So that's what's puzzling me.
Okay, allow me to get some clarification with staff. Staff, if this motion passed, is Councillor Baxter's concerns valid? Or I'm not saying they're invalid, but
Your Worship, if I may.
Yes.
I had a very similar question. If this motion is to amend Councillor Parkinson's original motion, the second last paragraph of Councillor Parkinson's original motion asks staff to invite Langford to participate in a joint traffic analysis. Is Councillor Kobayashi's motion amending that joint traffic analysis, or does Councillor Kobayashi's motion happen after and that call would direct staff? And so very much similar to Councillor Baxter's question, administration are unclear if Councillor Kobayashi's motion is clarifying the second last paragraph of Councillor Parkinson's motion, or if it's a separate study from the study envisioned in the second last paragraph of Councillor Parkinson's motion.
Councillor Kobayashi.
My intention was that it wasn't necessarily, like, I was hoping to word this properly. I didn't want another study to be done. It was that just that independent expert to review everything that has been done and will be done right now, including the TIA, which is going to be finalized shortly from what I understand. But and to give us the advice on this, because that's the problem right now. We just don't have the expertise. So I guess, so to answer your question, Mr. Earl, it was after. It was like after the fact. Yes. That's what I intended.
Your Worship, if I may?
You may.
If Councillor's original motion were to pass, absent Councillor Kobayashi's motion, just for sake of argument, administration would approach the City of Langford. Should the City of Langford agree, administration would hire a consultant, and that consultant would perform the work that's described in this paragraph. That work would be not dissimilar to A, B, and C in Councillor Kobayashi's motion. The difference between the two is if Langford were to not agree to participate, then we would be left in a situation of not having direction to do what Councillor Kobayashi is suggesting we do in A, B, and C.
Thank you.
Good point.
So, Council, is there further discussion, or are people prepared to vote? I'm sorry. I can't see people, so I'm going to screens. I see Councillor Parkinson, then Baxter's hands up. Councillor Parkinson.
Do we need to put in something conditional, like should Langford not participate in a traffic review with Colwood, then Councillor Kobayashi's steps kick in? Not quite sure of the wording, and of course, without the motion in front of me, I'm lost. So, but I'm wondering if to make it conditional on what happens with the discussion with Langford would help. And I guess that's probably a question mostly to
Council. So, sorry, I'm just going to jump in. Council, is there any appetite for us, and I'm happy to commit to this, for us to pass the main motion, have the conversation with Langford, and then have staff report back and bring this motion back to this table once we know what the answers are from Langford? Or does council wish to continue to try and address this motion tonight? And I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just trying to help facilitate.
I think your suggestion might shorten the evening, Your Worship, which would be a great thing.
Okay. But I am looking to council. I'm happy to call the question, and right now we have a motion that I am prepared to call the question on, and I will sever. So I'm going to go back to hands. Councillor Parkinson, I'm assuming, can I drop your hand, or did you wish to discuss again? I'll come back to you, but I'm going to drop your hands or not. You just dropped it. Okay. Councillor Baxter, do you wish to discuss any further? Can I drop your hand?
Yes, no, I do wish to discuss further. I think we're in a situation where we have a motion and an amendment that don't quite fit together. And I think it's the responsibility of the mover and seconder to tell us what their intent is to make them fit together, unless we're going to have an amendment to the main motion, which makes them fit together. And that would get way too complicated.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Kobayashi's hand up, so I'm going to leapfrog and go to the mover, Councillor Kobayashi.
I can think in 3D here, but if it's going to facilitate this and make this easier, I'm willing to, as you suggested, Mayor Martin, have the conversation happen with Langford, and then I would like to just defer this or table this until we know the outcome of that. And then we can bring this, we can retable this at a future council meeting. That's my suggestion right now.
Okay, so I will go to Ms. Lalonde. Ms. Lalonde, is a tabling action the proper mechanism for Councillor Kobayashi with this motion?
You could do that, or you may wish to just withdraw the motion at this time and vote on the main motion as is.
Well, no, I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose what Councillor Kobayashi has spoken about, and I want to make sure that there's something in place so that we can bring it back to a future one. So I would prefer to table it. I think if I have that option, I think I would choose tabling. Can you please remind me how I would table? Is it the discussion on tabling, or do I just call the vote?
No, I would defer the motion until you have the response back from Langford, because that's what you're waiting on, correct?
Correct.
And you want to bring it back to the following council meeting pending that?
Correct. I don't want to speak for Councillor Kobayashi, but that's what I believe.
I think that's what I'm hearing, but.
Yeah. So you're suggesting that this amendment should be a deferral?
No, we can table it till that time. Yeah.
And what do I need to do as the chair? What do I need to do to table this?
So you have, I believe, Councillor Kobayashi, and I was just trying to see who the seconder was. I believe it was Councillor Parkinson that seconded this motion.
Okay.
Correct. So you would like to put this, if you table it, it's tabling it to a later day that's assigned that we know of, or a later meeting, which we don't know at this time. I don't know how long it will take to get your information that you need to proceed.
Mr. Earl, can you give us a suggestion on when we should table to?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think what you're seeking is a motion from one of your councillors to table this issue until such time Colwood has heard back from Langford.
Okay, great. So I will issue that, or I will move that. Is that up for discussion now, or is this is council allowed to discuss tabling? I just trying to be clear on rules.
No, that motion would stop the discussion.
Okay. So Councillor Kobayashi, I'm just confirming that you're comfortable with that motion as a table.
Yes, I was just going to table it myself. So
okay, great. Thank you. And I need a seconder to that motion. Seconded by Councillor Parks. Oh, your hand's up, Councillor Day. Okay, thank you, sir. I can't see you. Councillor Day seconds the tabling. So I will clear hands. I will call the question on the table. Is there any in opposition? Nobody opposes to that motion, which brings us back to the main motion, which I believe I have a mover and seconder for. Correct, staff?
Yes, you have Councillor Baxter moved and Councillor Parkinson seconded.
Great. Is there any further discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. That takes us to 612, which is Councillor Dean Jansen regarding a crust update. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you. I will be brief. If we can just flash up that PowerPoint, please, Amanda.
Sorry, just give me one moment here.
So meanwhile, I'll just start here. I represent the city of Colwood to the Crest board. As I brought before you in the past, that there was a search for a piece of property. Well, first there was an in-depth study that was conducted by a contract engineering firm to decide whether we should be looking at moving, whether we should be acquiring an existing building, whether we should be looking at a new build. You can jump ahead a couple of pages for me, please. Yeah, one more. Thank you. Right there. So as part of the strategic plan review, it was identified that our critical infrastructure for Crest was at risk, and this risk was, somewhat realized this past summer with things like the heat dome, and in the fall here, things like the flooding that occurred around the province. So to protect our critical infrastructure, it was decided through a subcommittee, which I was a part of, and recommendations to the board as a whole, that we would go down the road of acquiring a piece of property and building our own purpose-built facility. We batted it around, and there was much work done by staff and through realtors that assisted us in conducting the study. In the end, it was determined that to buy an existing building and remediate it to the standard that we required was going to be cost prohibitive and would likely require a complete rebuild to the point where a purpose-built facility became the most likely and the most feasible option. So site has been determined. It is in the city of Langford. Can you go to the next slide for me, Amanda? Thank you. And one more. Thank you. So one more, please, Amanda. Sorry, there's a lot of background information here, but in essence, a site has been decided upon in the city of Langford. It's actually in the area of the Costco, the new development that's going in near Costco. It's a 0.9 of an acre parcel, and the budget for a new build facility is $16 million. That facility will allow us to coalesce multiple storage locations and cache of equipment into one purpose-built facility that is intended to withstand the earthquake risk for our region. It will also allow for expansion and future staff members, so accommodate all staff members on site. There will be no need to have a secondary office facility, as the second floor mezzanine area will be a boardroom / offices for all of the employees. And it will allow room for a future expansion as well. By doing this, we'll be able to protect our critical infrastructure, which includes all of the back end for all the radio systems. Currently, as you know, we have a couple of storage units that we're working out of, and the main site is at the RCMP headquarters. We'll be moving all that into the purpose-built facility, which will have a 30-meter tower and will be the main broadcast facility as well. It will also house all of our mobile transmitters. So a big piece of the plan for a earthquake or other natural disaster in the region is to mobilize quickly a bunch of mobile antennas. It's anticipated that much of the current infrastructure would be at least partially compromised during an earthquake. So rolling out the mobile antennas is a critical piece to this, which means they have to exist in a building or live in a building that is going to withstand these forecasted issues. Next slide, please, Amanda. Next one. And here's some of the details. It's a 0.9 acre parcel in the City Gate area. Purchase agreement is with Seacliff Properties for about 1.8 million. The preliminary estimated cost, which is like a Class D standard, is about $16 million. And it will be financed through the MFA. And this will meet our current and future needs, and in fact exceed them to an extent where we will be able to grow for the future. Now, I think some of the key takeaways here for us as a community, financially, we've done well by owning our current site. That will be leveraged into the purchase of the piece of property. But also we have the borrowing capacity with the MFA, because there is some outstanding loans that are due to be fulfilled within the next couple of years. So the timing is right. It's also, I think it's important to understand that we don't anticipate any additional increases to the dues that are paid by each community. It's the growth per year is anticipated at 2.9% as far as additional revenue year over year. And there is no anticipated increase to those future levies as a part of this process. So I'm happy to entertain any questions. This will be an ongoing process. There is a motion here, and the motion is for your support for me to go forward for the May AGM, which is where this will be presented to the board, and it requires a 2/3 approval to move forward. I'm happy to entertain non-technical questions, as I'm not an engineer.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm back.
Gotcha.
I just had it as you were talking. I don't see any hand. Oh, I do see hands. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of quick questions, Councillor Jensen, on this. Number one, so will there actually be a breakdown on what our contributions are and what this means to our contributions? So that's my first question. Second question is the province still going ahead with their emergency response center, that earthquake-proof thing? They were going to move it out of Saanich, and they were looking for a home, and it was supposed to be this big earthquake facility, and this would have been ideal to put it all together, I would have thought, but I don't know if they're still proceeding with that. So they're my two questions. Thanks.
So, sorry, your first one was about the finance side, is that right?
Yeah, just what does this? How does this impact us exactly? Like, we're obviously what we're paying. We're going to be paying Intercrest is going to have to go up, but I just don't. Do you understand what the impact of that is yet? It's too early at this point in time.
So I am watching, and there's several of us that are watching the financial side, and I think the key takeaways here is they're in a much more viable financial state now than they were a number of years ago. That has afforded them the ability to retire some future debt here in the next couple of years. So the timeline for this, I believe in there, it says 23. Well, it's going to be nearing the end of some debt we'll be retiring. So in essence, we have the borrowing capacity to move forward without increasing anybody's levy. So again, the forecast is 2.9% year over year is the expected increase, and that's across the board for all the communities, and that's the budget, that's sort of the threshold that they're anticipating, and there's no increase to that as a result of this construction. They found a way to really crunch the numbers and work the finances, and kudos to Councillor Logan and all the predecessors before me. They took good decisions on buying their property, were able to leverage that property. So, and we looked at all options, just to be very clear. We did look at a lot of different options, and unfortunately we just kept coming back to this one. And it's the age-old adage that if we don't deal with this today, could be 4 times as much by next year at the rate we're going. So we do need to do something. We need to do it quickly. And just the timing is good with the debt retirement and the acquisition of this property, but also the value of our assets as well that we're able to leverage. Sorry, and the backside to that was
the I know the provincial government was planning on building an emergency response center. Yes.
And I know that Gord Horth looked at all sorts of options, and it was co-locating with all sorts of different partners, whether it be sort of Saanich Fire or in conjunction with the West Shore RCMP and perhaps a new build there. The reality is none of them really have the timeline that we're looking for. We do have an accelerated timeline. We do need to deal with this, and we need to deal with it swiftly. We have a lot of expensive infrastructure with the P25 that we're in the midst of paying for that. That's like a $25 million upgrade. So we do have some critical infrastructure. It does need to be protected. And fortunately or unfortunately, this is going to cost us, and we do need to build this building.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dean.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Baxter, Council, I just want to give everybody a heads up. It is 9:30 right now. and we have an in-camera that is time sensitive, so we have to go past 10 if we're not efficient with our time. So I'm just letting people know. I mean, you could vote against it and not go past, but we have to get through an in-camera. Councillor Baxter.
Move the motion.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposed. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh,
Yep. Point of order. Did you get a seconder? Seconder?
yeah, I had Councillor Kobayashi.
Okay, thank you. Just checking.
Thank you. Moving on to 6.13, Councillor Dean Jansen regarding limited development of surface parking lots for auto sales.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, I'll do my best to be brief here. My motion is before you there. It is it is as presented. I did work on this with staff, so it has been vetted through staff as far as viability for the wording. A little bit of motivation on my part. Sorry, do you want me to get to that, or do you want to do your bit first?
Yeah, sure. You know what? Yeah, I'll come back to you. Let's look for a seconder first. Councillor Baxter, are you seconding the motion? Or are you
Yes,
yeah,
I'm
okay.
seconding the motion.
Thank you. Let's come back to Councillor Jansen. Then go ahead.
Your Worship and Council, but I'll keep it brief. The reality is that our community is growing in leaps and bounds, and we've all witnessed that in this term with where we're at today from where we started. Those lands that we've started now working through development in our core areas there that were once car lots, it got me thinking that really I believe this community is transitioning, and we're in a state of transition where perhaps we shouldn't be the first thought when someone's looking to purchase an automobile to let's make our way out to the Colwood Strip. I believe it's time for us to move in a direction that will that is consistent with some of our climate action objectives that we've stated as a group. These large swaths of pavement, which are, for lack of a better reference, a parking lot. I believe there's a far better use for these lands. Now, just for clarity's sake, this isn't intended to be stifling in any way to the economic viability of these operations. It's not intended to be an attack on any existing car lot. What I'm proposing here is that as these lots or these businesses choose to move or wrap up their business, that zoning then evaporate and that land use be removed from the permitted uses for that piece of property. And what that looks like is if somebody else wants to come along and again, open up a car lot on that property, they're forced to go through the rezoning process. That rezoning process means it comes to us as a council, and we have some say on whether we agree that is a pertinent land use for that area, consistent with the visions that have evolved from our OCP and all the work that the community and our staff have done over the number of years. So again, it's not prohibiting it. What it is applying more process if someone wants to actually open up a new car lot or renew a current facility that perhaps changes hands. So I want to be clear on that. And I believe that unlocking some of these lands that are viable for commercial development in our core area and seeing a higher and better use for these locations, or seeing some creativity where perhaps, we have some nifty mixed use ideas that includes a tower of residential on top of some viable commercial enterprise. So those are my thoughts. That's my motivation. I would love to hear what my peers have to say. And I would just love for this to move forward and get to a bit of a public process and hear what our community has to say about this idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, your hand's up. Did you wish to discuss?
No, my hand was up to second.
Okay, I didn't want to take it down until I confirmed. I don't see any other hands, so I will call the question on the motion. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. Moving on to 6.14. This is Councillor Michael Baxter in regards to affordable. Oh, sorry, Councillor Day. Sorry, is that you?
No, it wasn't me.
Okay. Sorry, my apologies, council. My headset went dead, the batteries, so I'm having to hear it differently. So I'm hearing a lot more background noise now from people. Councillor Baxter, in regards to the affordable housing workshop. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, as the motion says, I don't want staff to go and gather information it hasn't already gathered. At this point, I want the point of the motion is for staff to hold a workshop to present us with the information that the city is already having to gather through provincial legislation and some perhaps new and untried ideas, as well as some old and well-tried ideas as to what we can do to provide affordable housing. And I've already put one of those ideas in front of staff, which is that we could use municipal land to provide leasehold lots and thus remove or reduce the land cost to providing housing, whether it be rental or purchase. But there are other ideas that will be in that workshop, like Habitat for Humanity and the rent bank, and maybe some rent to own ideas as well. So that's the point of it. And then coming out of that, council would let staff know what other information, if any, they need and what direction they'd like staff to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to count that as Councillor Baxter's motivation as well, but I do need a second to the mover. Is there anyone? Councillor Day has seconded it. Councillor Day, do you wish to discuss it all?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson?
Sorry, I know we're in a hurry, but I'd like to make an amendment, and that would be to add number 4, that what are the responsibilities of the different levels of government? It's very confusing to me. There's all levels of government involved, and just because I don't want us to be doing affordable housing just because it's downloaded from the province, their responsibility. So let's see what we can do effectively, but let's make sure other levels of governments do what they should be doing as well. So I'd like to make that amendment.
Thank you. So sorry, can you give me that wording again, Councillor Parkinson?
Yeah, it would be for what are the responsibilities of the different levels of government in affordable housing?
Okay, thank you. That will be an amendment, and it looks like Councillor Day is seconding that amendment.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I will call the question on the amendment. Just a moment. I'm just going to drop Councillor Day's hand. Those in opposition? Sorry, Councillor Day. I think we did this again. Did you mean to oppose, or were you
Sorry, no, was trying to make my hand go away.
Yeah, no, I put your hand down too, and then I think we did it at the same time, and it popped back up. Okay, I think everybody's hands down right now, so I'm going to call the question one more time. Those in opposition to the amendment? Nobody opposes. Thank you. That brings us back to the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition to the main motion? Nobody opposes. Thank you. That moves us to bylaws. Bylaw number 7.1. This is bylaw number 1742-02 development permit delegation. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Logan. Need to lower hands. I will call the question, or excuse me, discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. Thank you. Lower hands. Thank you. 7.2 bylaw number 1917 Colwood Main Sewer LAS enlargement for 3378 Wishart Road. This is for first, second, and third reading. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to bylaw number 1918, Colwood West Sewer LES for the same address. This is for first, second, and third reading. Moved by Councillor Jansen, second by Councillor Logan. Is there discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. I need I'm now in motion to close the meeting to the public. Under the authority of section 90.1 A, C, G, and I of the community charter, the public will be excluded. 90.1A is a part of the council meeting may be excluded to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to or is one of the following. A, personal information about the identifiable individuals who hold or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. C, labor relations or other employee relations. E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interest of the municipality. G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. And I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Moved by Councillor Jansen, seconded by, thank you, Councillor Day, to move in camera, lower hands. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Council, you have a second link, so you need to log off of this Zoom and go to your 10 o'clock Zoom link, and we will start as soon as everybody gets on. So I'm going to give everybody, take 2 minutes if you need to use the washroom, grab a drink or something like that. But it is 9:44 right now. If I could have everybody back online on